Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of What If Deku Mastered Cursed Energy? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. People are not created equal. That is the hard, immutable truth I learned at the age of 4. It wasn't a lesson taught with kindness or patience. It was a reality etched into the fabric of society, dictated by the presence or absence of a genetic anomaly. The world had shifted on its axis generations ago, pivoting from the technological stagnation of the 21st century into the vibrant, chaotic era of quirks. The glowing baby in Ching Ching City had heralded the dawn of the superhuman, and in doing so, had inadvertently cast a long, cold shadow over those who remained mundane. But lately, as I walked the streets of Mizudafu, head bowed and shoulders hunched against the invisible weight of the world, I wonder if that inequality stretches back further than the glowing baby. I wonder if the unfairness of the world is not a new invention, but an ancient beast that has merely changed its skin. In my notebooks, between the sketches of heroes and the frantic scribbles of stat analysis, I sometimes write about the myths. The history books call it the pre-quirk era, a time of normalcy. But the older texts, the ones collecting dust in the back of the municipal library, the ones that smell of rot and old incense whisper of something else. They speak of an era called Heian. They speak of the Dark Ages. They speak of monsters that weren't born of genetic mutations, but of human malice. They speak of a king. I don't know why I obsess over these ghost stories. Maybe it's because, as a quirkless boy in a superhuman world, I feel like a ghost myself. So, as third-year students, it's time to think seriously about your futures and what you want to do with your lives. The teacher's voice was a drone, a buzzing fly against the window pane of my dissociation. I stared at my desk, the wood grain worn smooth by years of nervous scratching. The classroom smelled of chalk dust, cheap floor wax, and the distinct, ozone-tinged scent of teenage hormones and suppressed quirks. I could pass out these career aptitude forms, the teacher continued, snatching a stack of papers from his podium. He held them up, a theatrical pause hanging in the air. Then, with a grin that felt too sharp, too complicit, he threw them into the air. But why bother? I know you all want to go to the hero track. The room exploded. It was a cacophony of cheers and the sudden, violent flare of supernatural abilities. Hands turned into rocks, eyes extended on stalks, and minor telekinesis sent pencils spinning. It was a display of individuality, a riot of power. I shrank into my seat, raising my hand only halfway, a timid gesture that I hoped would go unnoticed. Yes, you've all got wonderful quirks, the teacher said, waving his hand dismissively. But using your powers at school is against the rules. Don't lump me in with these extras. The voice cut through the noise like a whip crack. Katsuki Bakugo. He sat with his feet propped up on his desk, his posture screaming arrogance. His ash-blonde hair spiked up as if defying gravity, and his red eyes held a perpetual glint of challenge. I'm not going to be stuck at the bottom with the rest of these rejects, Bakugo sneered, a small explosion popping in his palm. I'm the real deal. I'm going all the way to the top. The class erupted in jeers, but Bakugo ignored them. He was right and they knew it. He was a prodigy, a force of nature wrapped in a middle school uniform. Oh, that's right, the teacher mused, checking his clipboard. Bakugo, you're aiming for UA High, aren't you? Silence fell over the room. UA High. The pinnacle. The fortress of heroes. It was the dream everyone chased, but the mountain only a select few could climb. The national school, someone whispered. It has a 0.2% acceptance rate. It's impossible. That's exactly why it's the only place worthy of me. Bakugo jumped onto his desk, declaring his dominance to the room. I aced the mock exams. I'm the only one here with the stuff to surpass all might and become the richest, greatest hero of all time. Oh, the teacher interrupted, his voice devoid of empathy. Midoriya, you wanted to go to UA too, didn't you? The silence that followed was different. It wasn't awe. It was a vacuum. I froze. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I could feel the eyes of 29 other students boring into the back of my skull. It was a physical pressure, heavy and suffocating. Then the laughter started. It wasn't a single laugh, but a wave. It crashed over me, drowning out my thoughts. Midoriya? No way. You can't get into the hero course just by studying. He's quirkless. What's he gonna do, write the villains to death? I stood up, my legs shaking, desperation clawing at my throat. There's no rule against it. I stammered, my voice cracking. Sure, there's no precedent, but... The explosion slammed into my desk, force and heat throwing me backward. I hit the floor hard, the air knocked out of my lungs. Smoke curled up from the scorched wood where my hands had been moments before. Hey, Deku! Bakugo loomed over me, smoke drifting from his palms. His face was twisted into a mask of pure disdain. You're below the rejects. You're quirkless. You're worse than nothing. How can you even stand in the same ring as me? I scooted back, my back hitting the chalkboard. Wait, Kaken. I'm not trying to compete with you. I swear. I held up my hands, a futile shield against his aggression. It's been my dream since I was little. Well, I won't know unless I try. Try! Bakugo roared, smoke billowing around him like a volcanic cloud. Try what? The entrance exam? You're taking the exam just to try. What can you do? You're defenseless. You just die. I looked down. The words stung because they were true. In a world of superhumans, I was a relic. An evolutionary dead end. And yet, deep inside me, in a place so dark and deep I rarely dared to look, something stirred. It wasn't a power. It wasn't a quirk. It was a feeling. A cold, ancient feeling. Like the memory of a shiver. I had felt it for years. Ever since I was 5, exploring the woods behind the playground, and I found that thing. That dried, shriveled object wrapped in old linen. I had been hungry, foolish, and driven by a strange compulsion I couldn't explain. I had swallowed it. I had gotten sick for a week, burning with a fever that made the doctors whisper about genetic rejection and autoimmune collapse. But I survived. I recovered. And the doctors said nothing had changed. I was still quirkless. The extra joint in my pinky toe proved it. I was empty. So why did I feel so full? The rest of the day was a blur of gray monotony. I moved through the lessons like an automaton, my mind drifting to my hero analysis notebook. It was my sanctuary, my way of understanding a world that refused to understand me. If I couldn't have power, I would have knowledge. I would understand every quirk, every hero, every strategy. When the final bell rang, I packed my bag quickly, eager to escape. I reached for my notebook, hero analysis for the future. No. A hand snatched it away. We're not done talking yet, Deku, Bakugo said, holding the notebook up. Kaken, please, I said, forcing a smile that felt brittle. Give it back. 2 of Bakugo's lackeys snickered behind him. Hero analysis for the future? Seriously? One of them laughed. This guy's delusional. Pathetic, Bakugo muttered. He clapped his hands together, the notebook sandwiched between his explosive palms. Ah! I gasped as smoke poured from his hands. Bakugo tossed the charred, smoking remains of my hard work out the open window. I watched it flutter down, landing in the koi pond below. My heart sank with it. Most top-string heroes have stories about their school days, Bakugo said, walking toward the door, his hands in his pockets. I want the shine of being the only student from this mediocre junior high to make it to UA. I'm a perfectionist. He paused, glancing back at me over his shoulder. His red eyes were cold, devoid of humanity. He placed a hand on my shoulder, his grip burning through my uniform. So here's a word of advice, he said softly, menacingly. Don't even apply, nerd. He walked away, his lackeys trailing behind him. I stood there, frozen, unable to speak, unable to move. My hands were clenched into fists at my sides, trembling with impotent rage. He can't say anything back, one of the lackeys laughed as they exited. He's so weak. Even at 3rd year, he still can't face reality. Bakugo stopped at the doorway. He didn't turn around. You know, he said, his voice casual as if discussing the weather. If you want to be a hero that badly, there might be a quick way to do it. I looked up. Believe that you'll be born with a quirk in your next life, Bakugo said, and take a swan dive off the roof. The world stopped. The air left the room. The sounds of the school, the chatter, the footsteps, the distant traffic faded into a high-pitched ringing in my ears. Take a swan dive off the roof. I turned around, fury bubbling up in my chest. I wanted to scream. I wanted to fight. I wanted to. Bakugo's hand sparked, small explosions popping threateningly. Yeah? What? I flinched. The anger died, strangled by fear. I was weak. I was nothing. I slumped, turning away. I walked out of the classroom, the echo of his laughter chasing me down the hall. The koi pond was murky, the surface slick with algae. My notebook bobbed in the water, the pages soaked and blackened. The fish nibbled at the edges, indifferent to my destroyed dreams. Stupid, I muttered, fishing it out. Stupid Kaken. I wiped the slime off the cover. Hero analysis for the future. The ink was running, the notes I had painstakingly compiled over months now blurring into illegible smears. If I really jumped, that would mean a murder charge for him, I whispered to myself, trying to find some logical foothold in the mess of my emotions. He didn't think before he spoke. Typical. I started the walk home. It was a route I knew by heart, winding through the residential district, past the convenience store, and under the highway underpass. As I walked, my mind spiraled. Is it really impossible? I thought about my mom. The way she had apologized to me when the doctor gave the diagnosis. I'm so sorry, Izuku. I'm sorry. She had hugged me, crying as if my lack of power was a tragedy, a death in the family. That wasn't what I needed to hear. I didn't need an apology. I needed someone to tell me that I could still do it. That the fire in my chest, the cold, heavy weight in my gut that felt like a coiled spring, meant something. I thought about the myths again. The Heian era. The golden age of sorcery, they called it in the occult books. A time when power wasn't a biological accident, but something honed, something grasped, something distinct. In those stories, there was a legend of a being with 4 arms and 2 faces. Ryaman Sukuna. The king of curses. A natural disaster given flesh. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't a villain in the modern sense. He was just absolute. He existed and the world bent around him. Sometimes, when I looked in the mirror, I felt like I was looking at a stranger. My eyes were green, round, and timid. But sometimes, for a split second, I imagined a second pair of eyes opening. I imagined tattoos black, sharp lines etching themselves across my skin. I shook my head, dispelling the fantasy. Stop it, Izuku, I scolded myself. You're getting delusional again. Focus on reality. You have to work harder than anyone else. That's the only way. I entered the underpass. The shadows stretched long and cool here, blocking out the afternoon sun. The acoustics changed, my footsteps echoing against the concrete walls. Clip-clop, clip-clop. It was quiet. Too quiet. I heard a sound behind me. A wet, squelching noise. Like mud sliding over stone. I froze. Don't look back. Just keep walking. But the instinct, the sharp, piercing instinct that I had always attributed to anxiety screamed at me. Move. I spun around. Rising from the manhole cover was a nightmare. It was a fluid, shifting mass of dark green sludge. 2 bulging, manic eyes floated in the muck, accompanied by a wide, toothy grin formed from the liquid itself. A medium-sized invisibility cloak. The monster rasped, its voice bubbling and distorted. My breath hitched. A villain? In the middle of the day? Why you? I stepped back, my legs trembling. The sludge lunged. It moved with terrifying speed, a tidal wave of filth. Don't worry, the villain hissed, the sludge surging forward to engulf me. I'm just going to take over your body. It'll only hurt for about 45 seconds. You'll feel better soon. I turned to run, but it was too late. The sludge crashed into me, heavy and suffocating. It forced its way into my mouth, my nose, my ears. It tasted of oil and sewage and death. Gah. MB. I clawed at the liquid, my fingers scrabbling for purchase, but it was like trying to grab water. The villain was fluid, he had no solid form to hold. You can't grab me. Villain laughed, the sound vibrating through my skull. I'm fluid. Thanks for the help. You're a real lifesaver. I didn't know he was in town. I gotta get out of here quickly. My vision began to blur. Black spots danced at the edges of my sight. My lungs burned, screaming for oxygen. I can't breathe. I can't. Panic set in. Pure, primal panic. I was going to die. I was going to die here, alone, in a dirty underpass, killed by a villain who saw me as nothing more than a meat suit. Is this it? Is this how it ends? No help. Someone. My strength faded. My arms fell to my sides. The notebook, the charred remains of my dream, slipped from my fingers and clattered to the concrete floor. Help me. The darkness closed in. My consciousness began to drift, untethering from my body. It was a slide into oblivion. But as the light faded, something else woke up. It started in the pit of my stomach. Not the fear. Not the nausea. It was a pulse. It was louder than my own heart. It was a drumbeat of pure, malevolent energy. It felt like ice water injected into my veins. It felt like a serrated blade sliding against my soul. The villain didn't seem to notice. He was too busy forcing himself down my throat, too busy gloating about his escape. But I felt it. Deep within the recesses of my mind, in the space where my self was fading away, a domain opened. It was a metaphysical space, dark and vast. There was a shrine there, a pile of skulls. And sitting atop the throne of bones, something opened its eyes. It wasn't concern I felt from within. It wasn't fear. It was amusement. How pathetic, a voice echoed, not in my ears, but in the very marrow of my bones. It was a voice that sounded like tearing metal, like the grinding of tectonic plates. To think my vessel would be extinguished by a pile of mud. The pressure in my chest spiked. The sludge villain paused, his fluid eyes widening in sudden confusion. What? The villain gurgled. What is this? This kid? His body? It's fighting back? No, it's rejecting me. He squeezed harder, trying to crush the resistance. Stop it. Just die quietly. My vision was almost gone. I was at death's door. The threshold was right there. And in that sliver of time between life and death, the ancient pact, the one sealed by a curious, hungry child years ago, trembled. The shadows in the tunnel seemed to lengthen. The air grew heavy, thick with a killing intent that had nothing to do with the sludge villain. Show me, the voice inside whispered, dripping with sadistic curiosity. Show me if you have the will to writhe, brat. Then the world went black. The world didn't fade to black. It was smashed into a blinding white. One moment, I was drowning in the viscous, suffocating embrace of the sludge villain, the taste of sewage and oil filling my mouth, my lungs burning with the desperate, clawing need for oxygen. The next, a tremendous pressure not of crushing fluid, but of displaced air slammed into us. Texas. Smash. The voice was a booming baritone that resonated in my chest, vibrating the very bones that housed something sinister. The air pressure was sudden and violent, a localized hurricane that blasted the sludge apart. The villain shrieked, his liquid form scattering like rain against the curved concrete walls of the underpass. I was thrown back, tumbling across the pavement, gasping for air. The sweet, cool oxygen rushed into my lungs, burning in the best way possible. I coughed, hacking up the remnants of the slime, my vision spinning. I apologize for getting you caught up in my villain hunting. I blinked, wiping the tears from my eyes. Standing there, illuminated by the of sunlight cutting through the sewer grate, was a towering figure. He was massive, a mountain of muscle clad in a white t-shirt and green cargo pants, his blonde hair swept back in two distinctive tufts. His smile was blinding, a beacon of safety in the gloom. But fear not. Because I am here. My brain short-circuited. It was him. The symbol of peace. The number one hero. All Might. I scrambled back, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The dark, ancient presence I had felt moments before, that cold, mocking voice in my head, retreated into the depths of my soul, silenced by the sheer, overwhelming aura of the hero standing before me. All Might, I squeaked, scrambling for my notebook. It was wet, charred, and pathetic, but I needed it. Please. An autograph. Sign my. I flipped it open. He had already signed it. The signature was massive, taking up 2 pages, the ink still wet. There you go. All Might gave a thumbs up, his teeth sparkling. Now, I must bring this fellow to justice. He held up 2 soda bottles, the sludge villain trapped inside, swirling angrily but impotently. Wait, already? I stood up, my legs shaking. But there are so many things I want to ask you. A pro-hero fights not only villains but also time. All Might declared, flexing his legs. The concrete beneath his feet cracked slightly. Stand back. Don't go. The desperation clawed at my throat again. The one question that had haunted me for 10 years. The question Bakugo had answered with a suicide suggestion. I needed to hear the answer from him. As All Might launched himself into the sky with a sonic boom, my body moved on its own. It wasn't the fluid, instinctive motion I would later come to associate with the curse living inside me. This was pure, desperate adrenaline. I lunged, my fingers hooking onto the fabric of his cargo pants just as he took flight. The wind tore at my face, peeling my lips back from my gums. The ground fell away instantly, replaced by a dizzying blur of rooftops and streets. Hey, let go. I love my fans, but this is too much. All Might shouted over the rushing wind, trying to shake his leg. If I let go now, I'll die. I screamed, the wind whipping my words away. All Might stopped shaking his leg. Oh, right. We landed on the roof of a nondescript office building. I collapsed onto the gravel, gasping, my knees turning to jelly. The adrenaline crash was hard, leaving me trembling. That was reckless. All Might chastised, checking the bottles in his pocket. I really have no time. I must go. Wait. I forced myself up. Please. All Might paused, his back to me. Steam began to rise from his body, his massive frame shivering slightly. I have to know, I stammered, staring at the ground, my fists clenched. I don't have a quirk. I'm plain. I get bullied. Everyone says I'm useless. I looked up, tears stinging my eyes. But I want to save people. I want to save everyone with a smile, just like you. Can even someone without a quirk be a hero like you? The silence that followed was heavy. The wind whistled through the chain-link fence at the edge of the roof. I waited for the validation. I waited for the catchphrase. Yes, young man. Anyone can be a hero. Instead, there was a hiss of steam. Pro-heroes are always risking their lives. The voice was different. It wasn't the booming baritone anymore. It was weaker, thinner. The steam cleared. Standing where the Titan had been was a skeletal figure. His clothes hung loosely on his emaciated frame. His eyes were sunken deep into black sockets, glowing with a dim, ghostly blue light. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. H-ha! I shrieked, stepping back. Where's All Might? You're a fake. An imposter. The man sighed, sitting down heavily on the concrete. I assure you I am All Might. He lifted his shirt. I gasped. The sight was horrific. A massive, spiderweb scar covered the entire left side of his torso. The flesh was purple and knotted, looking less like healed skin and more like a crater. It looked like something had taken a chunk out of him. 5 years ago, All Might whispered, touching the scar. My respiratory system was decimated. My stomach was removed. I've wasted away due to the repeated surgeries and the aftereffects. I can only do hero work for about 3 hours a day now. 5 years ago? I whispered. Was that the fight with Toxic Chainsaw? You know your stuff, All Might chuckled humorlessly. But no, that punk couldn't do this to me. This was done by a villain who's not even in the public records. A villain so strong, I had to bury the incident to maintain the symbol of peace. He looked at me, his eyes serious, stripping away the persona. You asked if you can be a hero without a quirk. He looked away, staring out at the city skyline. I cannot simply say yes. The job is too dangerous. Police officers get teased, but their job is noble. It's a fine path. But to stand on the front lines? Without power? He shook his head. No. I don't think you can. The words hit me harder than Bakugo's explosions. They were quiet. They were rational. They were spoken by the greatest hero in the world. My world shattered. The small flame of hope I had been nurturing for a decade was snuffed out. It's good to dream, young man, All Might said, walking toward the door to the stairwell. But you have to consider reality. He left. I stood there on the roof for a long time. The sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long, orange shadows across the concrete. Consider reality. Inside me, the presence stirred again. It was faint, like a vibration in the floorboards. It felt disgusted, not at All Might. At me. At my despair. Is this it? I thought numbly. Is this really the end? I walked home in a daze. I didn't even notice where I was going until the sound of explosions snapped me back to the present. Smoke billowed into the sky from the Tatooine shopping district. Crowds were gathering, pushing against police barricades. A villain? I muttered, instinct taking over despite my crushed heart. I should check. No, I shouldn't. I turned to leave, but the crowd surged, pushing me forward. I caught a glimpse of the chaos. Flames roared, liking the sides of the buildings. Heroes were standing around, helpless. Death Arms was holding back rubble. Kamui Woods was struggling with the fire. MT Lady couldn't fit in the street. And in the center of the inferno, the sludge villain was back. I didn't capture him? I froze, the blood draining from my face. It fell. When I grabbed All Might, the bottle fell. This was my fault. The villain had a hostage. A student. He was suffocating them, using their body as a shield and a source of explosions. Explosions? I squinted through the smoke. The hostage thrashed, firing off blasts of nitroglycerin. Ash-blonde hair. Red eyes filled with terror and rage. Kaken. My mind went blank. The heroes were just watching. They were waiting for someone with the right quirk. They were saying, there's nothing we can do. Nothing we can do? He was dying. Bakugo was dying because of me. Because I was weak. Because I distracted All Might. Suddenly, Bakugo's eyes met mine. For a second, the arrogance was gone. He looked like he was drowning. The heartbeat inside me slammed against my ribs. It wasn't the timid flutter of fear. It was a war drum. My legs moved. Idiot! Stop! Death Arms shouted. I didn't listen. I ducked under the barricade and sprinted toward the inferno. But why was I running? I had no power. I had no weapon. I was quirkless. The weak are meat, the inner voice whispered. The strong eat. But I wasn't running to eat. I was running to save. Deku! Bakugo choked out, his mouth muffled by slime. The villain turned his eyes toward me. You again? He swung a massive tendril of sludge. I didn't think. I just reacted. I swung my backpack with everything I had. It struck the villain in the eye, the metal buckle digging into the liquid. Gah! The villain recoiled. I clawed at the sludge covering Bakugo's mouth. Kaken! Are you here? Bakugo gasped. I don't know. I screamed, tears streaming down my face, mixing with the soot. My legs. They just moved on their own. You looked like you were asking for help. For a split second, time seemed to slow. The sludge villain recovered. He loomed over us, a tidal wave of death. I'm done playing with you. I looked up. I was going to die. But this time, I wasn't just afraid. I was angry. Angry at my weakness. Angry at the villain. Angry at the world that watched and did nothing. Deep within the spiritual void, a demon has opened his eyes on his throne of bones. He watched the boy his vessel stand before a calamity with nothing but trembling hands and a weeping heart. Interesting, the demon thought. He has no strength, no technique, yet he rushes into the maw of death. It wasn't bravery. It was madness. And the monster appreciated madness. The villain strike descended. And then blood sprayed. Not mine. All Might appeared in a blur of speed, catching the villain's attack with his bare arm. He was back in his muscle form, though blood spewed from his mouth. I really am pathetic. All Might growled, his voice vibrating with fury. I told you the traits of a great hero, but I didn't live up to them myself. He grabbed Bakugo's arm with one hand and the villain with the other. Pros are always risking their lives. Detroit. Smash. The punch changed the weather. The wind pressure was catastrophic. It tore the sludge villain apart at the molecular level, scattering him into the atmosphere. The flames were snuffed out instantly. The clouds above swirled and broke, and within seconds, rain began to fall from the clear sky. The crowd went silent. Then they erupted. I sat on the pavement, gasping, staring at the rain. The aftermath was a different kind of torture. The heroes scolded me. Kamui Woods and Death Arms shouted about recklessness, about suicide, about interfering with professional work. I took it all, head bowed, nodding. Bakugo, on the other hand, was praised. Great quirk. You held out so long. You're a natural. It was the reality of the world condensed into 10 minutes. The strong are praised for surviving. The weak are scolded for trying. As the sun set, I walked home, exhausted. My body felt heavy, but my mind was strangely clear. Deku! I turned. Bakugo stood there, panting, his uniform disheveled. I didn't ask for your help, he yelled, his voice cracking. And you didn't save me. I was fine. Don't look down on me, you nerd. He turned and stomped away. I sighed. At least he was alive. I am here. All Might slid out from around a corner, striking a pose. All Might. I jumped. How did you get away from the reporters? Ha! I stand for justice, not sound bites. He coughed, and suddenly poofed back into his skeletal form, wiping blood from his chin. Young man, he said, his voice serious again. I came to thank you. And to correct what I said earlier. I looked up. If you hadn't been there, if I hadn't heard your story, I would have been a bystander in a bodysuit. I would have let fear stop me. He clenched his fist over his heart. Top heroes have stories about them from their school days, All Might said. Most of them have one thing in common. Their bodies moved before they could think. My breath hitched. The memory of the sprint. The feeling of my legs burning. That happened to you today, didn't it? Tears welled up in my eyes. The dam broke. I fell to my knees, clutching my chest. Yes, I sobbed. All Might looked down at me, the setting sun framing him like a halo. You can be a hero. The next few weeks were a blur of pain and sand. All Might Toshinori Yagi, as he introduced himself, had a plan. He called it the Aim to Pass American Dream Plan. It sounded cool. In practice, it was hell. The Dagoba Municipal Beach Park was a garbage dump. Tires, refrigerators, scrap metal, and literal mountains of trash covered the coastline. My job was to clean it, all of it, before the UA entrance exam in 10 months. The vessel must be prepared. All Might shouted from atop a pile of fridges, sitting comfortably as I dragged a massive truck tire through the sand. This is impossible. I groaned, my arms screaming. One for all, my quirk, is the crystallization of power. All Might explained. If you inherited it now, your limbs would shoot off and you'd explode. Your body is a weak cupcake. We need to turn you into a gourmet fruit tart. A tart? I wheezed. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. Every day, I woke up before dawn. I ran. I lifted. I dragged. I ate the insane diet plans All Might wrote for me. I studied until my eyes bled. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. Something was happening to me. At first, it was just sore muscles. But around the 3rd month, the change shifted. I wasn't just getting stronger in the way a gym goer gets stronger. I was dragging a rusted safe across the sand one morning, the metal digging into my shoulder. It must have weighed 300 pounds. I grunted, pushing through the resistance. Suddenly, a jolt of energy surged through my spine. It felt like static electricity, but heavier. Crunch. My fingers, gripping the edge of the safe, indented the metal. I stopped, staring at my hand. The rusty steel had distinct finger marks pressed into it, as if it were clay. Young Midoriya? All Might called out. You okay? Why yeah. I shouted back, hiding the hand. Just slipped. I looked at my hand again. My grip strength shouldn't be that high. And then there were the reflexes. A week later, a stack of tires toppled over while I was passing by. Before I could even register the danger, I had moved. I didn't just dodge, I backflipped. A perfect, standing backflip, clearing 6 feet of distance, landing in a crouch that felt unnatural yet perfectly balanced. All Might stared at me, his eyes wide. Whoa! Since when could you do gymnastics? I don't know, I said, looking at my legs. They felt dense. Powerful. Like springs compressed to their limit. It wasn't just muscle. It was durability. I dropped a mini fridge on my foot by accident. It dented the fridge. My foot was fine. Not even a bruise. Deep inside, beneath the sweat and the exhaustion, the presence was watching. It wasn't speaking. It wasn't interfering. It was simply permeating. Just as a teabag steeps in hot water, the soul of a demon was steeping in the body of Izuku Midoriya. The demon was a being of physical perfection, a four-armed calamity that had slaughtered armies. His soul remembered that strength, and his vessel was beginning to remember it too. By the 10th month, the beach was clean. I stood atop the pile of trash I had gathered, screaming my lungs out at the sunrise. I was shirtless, my body transformed. Gone was the scrawny, trembling boy. In his place was a lean, ripped fighter. My muscles were dense, corded like steel cables. All Might looked at me, pride swelling in his chest. You did it. You really did it. You exceeded my expectations, young Midoriya. You finished right on time. He walked up to me, plucking a stray hair from his head. Now, he said, holding it out. Eat this. Huh. To inherit the power, you have to ingest some of my DNA. Don't ask questions. Just eat. I looked at the hair. Then I looked at the horizon. The entrance exam was in 2 hours. I took the hair. I swallowed it. It tasted dry. So, I asked, wiping my mouth, do I feel it? The power? It takes a few hours to digest, All Might said, transforming into his muscle form. Now go. Go to UA and show them what you're made of. I grabbed my bag and ran. I didn't take the train. I ran. My feet struck the pavement, cracking the asphalt slightly with each step. I was moving at 30 miles per hour, easy. The wind whipped through my hair. I vaulted over fences, cleared small gaps between buildings. I felt light. I felt invincible. I didn't know yet that the power I was feeling wasn't just one for all waiting to be born. It was the foundation. I had built a temple strong enough to hold a god. But temples are also built to hold demons. I arrived at the massive gates of UA High, skidding to a halt. The sheer scale of the building was intimidating. Thousands of students were walking in. I took a deep breath. I can do this. I took a step forward and tripped over my own foot. Of course. I braced for the impact, closing my eyes. But I didn't hit the ground. I was floating. Are you okay? I opened my eyes. A girl with a round face and brown bobbed hair was touching my backpack. I was hovering an inch off the concrete. It's my quirk, she said, smiling brightly. Sorry for using it on you without asking, but it's bad luck to fall on exam day. She released me, and I landed softly on my feet. I'm Achiko Uraraka, she said. Good luck. She walked away, waving. I stood there, face flushing red. I talked to a girl. Well, she talked to me. But still, I clenched my fist. The anxiety was there, but beneath it, the new strength hummed. Get out of my way, Deku. Bakugo walked past me, not even looking at me. He seemed focused. Dangerous. I watched him go. I'm not the same, Kaken, I thought, touching my chest where 2 hearts now beat in sync, one of a hero and one of a monster. I'm not a pebble on the side of the road anymore. I walked through the gates. The practical exam awaited. and deep down, the demon smirked. Let the feast begin. The auditorium of UA High wasn't just a room, it was a canyon of steel and glass, designed to make you feel small. It was filled with the nervous energy of hundreds of teenagers, a psychic cocktail of ambition and nausea. The air tasted of floor wax, recycled AC, and the sharp tang of anxious sweat. I sat squeezed in the middle rows, sandwiched between a trembling boy whose skin looked like jagged bedrock and, unfortunately, Katsuki Bakugo. Welcome to the live performance. Present Mike screamed from the stage. His voice, amplified by his quirk, hit us like a physical wall of sound, rattling the teeth in my skull. Everybody say, hey. Silence stretched out, thick and awkward. Tough crowd. Mike shrugged, the leather of his jacket creaking loud enough to be heard over the speakers. All right, examinees. I'm here to give you the lowdown on the practical exam. Are you ready? I hunched over my desk, the wooden surface cool against my forearms. My lips moved on autopilot. Present Mike. The voice hero. His radio show is top tier, but his actual combat efficiency is often underrated due to his loud persona. The directional range of his sound waves can incapacitate villains before they even realize. Shut up, Deku, Bakugo hissed. He didn't turn his head, his eyes were locked forward, but his shoulders were tight, coiled like springs. Your mumbling is like nails on a chalkboard. Sorry, I whispered, clamping my mouth shut, but my mind wouldn't stop racing. I wasn't just nervous, I was vibrating at a frequency that felt dangerous. Since consuming the finger and spending the last 10 months turning my body into a vessel capable of holding a demon, I felt compressed. It was the only word for it. My skin felt too tight, like a suit 2 sizes too small for the energy coiling beneath it. It wasn't the one for all that All Might had described. I couldn't feel that warm torch yet. It was something else. A baseline humming in my marrow. A cold, metallic taste at the back of my throat that wouldn't go away. The written exam had been a breeze. My years of obsessive analysis meant I knew hero laws, quirk theory, and tactical history better than most pros. But the practical. That was the variable. You'll be conducting 10-minute mock urban battles. Present Mike announced, the massive screen behind him lighting up with a stylized diagram of the battle centers. You can bring whatever you want. After this presentation, you'll head to your specified battle center, okay? I looked down at my exam ticket, the paper slightly damp from my grip. Battle Center B. Teach, Bakugo scowled, glancing at his own card with a sneer. Centered, DMN it. They split us up so we can't work together. Or so you don't kill me, I muttered under my breath. I heard that. Excuse me. A hand shot up in the middle of the auditorium, cutting through the tension like a blade. A tall boy with glasses and a severe, aerodynamic haircut stood up. His posture was so rigid he looked like he was vibrating with righteousness. May I ask a question? The boy projected his voice clearly, every syllable enunciated perfectly. On the printout, there are 4 types of villains. If that is a misprint, then UA, the most prestigious school in Japan, should be ashamed of that foolish mistake. He turned, swiveling his entire torso to point a stiff finger directly at me. You. The one with the curly hair. I froze, my blood running cold. And me. You've been muttering this whole time. It's distracting. If you're here on a sightseeing trip, then leave immediately. A ripple of giggles washed through the auditorium. My face burned hot, the shame pricking at my eyes. I shrank into my seat, mouthing a silent apology, wishing the floor would open up and swallow me whole. Pathetic, a voice echoed in the deepest vault of my mind. Snap his finger off. I flinched, gripping the desk. Okay, examinee 7111. Present Mike waved his hands, diffusing the situation. The 4th villain type is worth 0 points. That guy's just an obstacle, so to speak. The gimmick. Think of it like a thwomp in Mario Brothers. I recommend you listeners just ignore it and focus on the others. 0 points, I thought, pushing the dark voice away. The trap. Avoid at all costs. Battle Center B. The gates to the mock city were enormous, towering structures of reinforced steel and concrete that made us look like insects. Beyond the gates lay a sprawling urban replica skyscrapers, intricate alleyways, paved roads. It was a movie set with a budget of billions. A massive crowd of examinees stood before the gates, stretching hamstrings and psyching themselves up. Some were hyperventilating, others were slapping their cheeks. I adjusted the teal tracksuit I had bought for the occasion. It was breathable, sturdy, and unassuming. I tightened the laces of my signature red sneakers, feeling the grit of the asphalt beneath my soles. Whoa, look at that guy. Is he shaking? He looks like he's gonna throw up. I ignored the whispers. I was shaking, but not from fear. It was anticipation. The demon inside me was awake. I could feel his attention shifting, like a heavy sleeper rolling over. It wasn't a voice this time, just a sensation. A phantom pressure on my soul. Like a predator watching a nature documentary through glass, waiting for the violence to start. I looked around, trying to ground myself. I saw the girl from the entrance exam, the one with the bob cut who had floated me. She was standing near the back, eyes closed, taking deep, rhythmic breaths. I should say thank you, I thought, for stopping my fall earlier. I took a step toward her. That girl appears to be trying to focus. A hand chopped down on my shoulder, heavy and unyielding. It was the glasses guy from the auditorium. "What are you doing?" he asked, looming over me, his lenses flashing in the sunlight. "Are you trying to sabotage her concentration? Is this part of your strategy?" "No. I stammered, hands flying up in defense. "I wanted to thank her." "Start." Present Mick's voice boomed from the watchtowers, distorted by the sheer volume. The crowd froze. "Start? No countdown? What's wrong?" Mike yelled, his voice laced with glee. "There are no countdowns in real fights. The die is cast." While the other examinees were processing the logic, hesitating for that fraction of a second, my body reacted. It was the same feeling as the sludge villain incident. My brain hadn't even registered the command before my calves fired. Then I launched myself off the asphalt. The force of my kickoff was excessive. A small spiderweb crack appeared in the road where my foot had been. I was a blur of teal and green, tearing past the startled students. The wind roared in my ears, whipping my hair back. Fast, I thought, shock flickering through my mind as the cityscape rushed toward me. I'm so fast. I was the first one through the gate. I was alone in the main street of the mock city, the silence of the fake urban canyon unsettling. Target acquired. A one-pointer. A generic robot balancing on a single massive wheel, armed with target lock guns. It rolled out from an alleyway, its optical sensors lighting up crimson. "Target found," it chirped mechanically. I didn't stop. I didn't slow down. I had no quirk to activate. No fire to shoot, no engine to rev. I just had the 10 months of hell on the beach. I had the muscles built to contain a godly quirk, and the latent, passive reinforcement of an internal energy source seeping into my fibers. I closed the distance in a second. The robot raised its arm to fire. I slid. I dropped low, my knees skimming the pavement, the rubber bullets whizzing harmlessly over my head. The smell of burning rubber filled my nose. Using the momentum, I planted my hand on the ground and pivoted, swinging my leg up in a vicious, calculated arc. Manji kick. My shin connected with the robot's neck joint. Crunch. It wasn't a clank, it was a screeching tear. Metal shrieked in protest. The impact wasn't just a hit, it was a demolition. The robot's head was torn clean off its chassis, wires sparking and snapping like confetti. The heavy body of the machine toppled over, skidding across the street in a shower of sparks. I stood up, panting slightly. I looked at my hands. I hadn't used one for all. I hadn't even squeezed my buttocks like All Might said. This was just me. "One point," I whispered. The sound of footsteps thundered behind me. The rest of the pack had caught up. "Did you see that?" someone yelled, breathless. "That kid just kicked its head off." "What's his quirk?" "Super strength." "Don't let him get them all." The chaos began. Lasers fired, searing the air. Explosions rocked the buildings. Debris rained down. I didn't have time to dwell on my victory. I moved. I ran down the main avenue, my eyes scanning, processing, dissecting. 3-pointer on the right. 2-pointer on the roof. I leaped. I grabbed a drain pipe and hauled myself up the side of a building with primate-like agility, my fingers digging into the brickwork. I vaulted over the parapet, landing directly on top of the scorpion-like 2-pointer. It thrashed, mechanical servos whining, trying to buck me off. I grabbed its metallic tail, braced my feet against its back, and pulled. My muscles bulged, tearing through the teal fabric of my sleeves. Ryop. The metal tail sheared off at the base. I jammed the jagged end into the robot's main sensor array. It sparked violently and died. 3 points. I dropped back to the street, landing in a crouch. A 3-pointer, a massive, tread-based tank burst through a wall, sending concrete dust billowing into the street. It leveled a cannon at a student who was stuck in debris. "Help!" the student screamed. I sprinted. I wasn't fast enough to push the massive robot, but I was fast enough to be a projectile. I jumped, twisting my body in the air like a drill. I drew my fist back. "Don't use the power. Just punch. Use the hips." I drove my knuckles into the side of the robot's chassis. Tum! The metal caved in. It wasn't a clean hole, but a massive, concave dent that crushed the internal gears together. The robot groaned, shuddered, and ground to a halt. "Whoa," the saved student gasped, eyes wide. "Thanks, man. Keep moving." I yelled, scrambling away, adrenaline sour in my mouth. 6 points. 7. 12. I was racking them up. It was working. I was going to pass. But as the minutes ticked by, the competition grew fierce. The other students were impressive. The glasses guy Ida, I assumed, was zooming around with engines in his calves, kicking robots apart with surgical precision. A blonde boy with a naval laser was melting through armor plating. Somewhere in the distance, I heard the distinctive boom of nitroglycerin explosions. Bakugo. He was probably at 50 points by now. I checked my internal tally. 28 points. It was good. But was it enough? The practical exam usually required high 30s to be safe. My breathing was heavy, ragged. Sweat poured down my face, stinging my eyes. My knuckles were bruised and bloody from punching steel without a hardening quirk. The pain was sharp, grounding. "Is this the limit of the successor?" The presence mocked quietly, slithering through my thoughts. "You fight like a brawler in a tavern. No elegance. No curse." "Shut up," I panted, wiping blood on my pants. "It's working." Then the ground shook. It wasn't a vibration. It was an earthquake. Boop, boop, boop. The rhythm was slow, heavy, inevitable. Dust clouds billowed from the north end of the city, blocking out the sun. The skyscrapers, the fake office buildings, trembled on their foundations. Glass shattered from the windows of nearby buildings just from the sonic pressure. A shadow fell over the street. I looked up, and up, and up. It was colossal. The 0-pointer. It was taller than the tallest building in the mock city. Its green paint was chipped and weathered, its massive tread crushing a 4-story structure like it was made of wet cardboard. Its red eyes glowed with the indifference of a natural disaster. "Is this a joke?" Someone whimpered nearby. The crowd broke. Panic, raw and ugly, took over. "Run! It's the 0-pointer. Get away! There's no points for fighting that thing. Just run." The stampede washed over me. I stood frozen, staring up at the mechanical titan. The scale of it triggered a primal fear, a lizard brain screamed to flee. It was a god of steel, and we were ants. I turned to run. My logic screamed at me. "Move, Izuku. You have 28 points. You might scrape by. Don't die here." "Ow." The sound cut through the panic. I looked back. Achiko Uraraka was on the ground. She was trapped under a pile of concrete rubble, her leg pinned. She was struggling, her face pale, looking up at the massive tread that was descending toward her. The 0-pointer was maybe 50 meters away. It would crush her in seconds. The other examinees were gone. It was just me. The strong eat. The memory of All Might's voice overlaid Sukuna's philosophy in a jarring dissonance. However, Ideally, the strong save. My legs stopped trembling. I didn't think about the points. I didn't think about the entrance exam. I didn't think about the fact that I was punching metal with bare flesh. I turned around and ran toward the Titan. I sprinted past the rubble, my eyes locked on the robot's face. I need height. I reached the base of the robot. I bent my knees, channeling every ounce of strength my enhanced body possessed. The pavement beneath my feet cracked, a spiderweb of fissures spreading out for 3 meters. Jump. I launched myself. It was explosive. The air displaced around me with a pop. I shot upward like a bullet, soaring past the first story, the second, the 10th. The wind tore at my eyes, blurring my vision. I was level with the robot's face. I floated there for a heartbeat, suspended in the air. The massive red camera eyes focused on me, the aperture closing. Now I thought, All Might said, clench your buttocks and yell from inside your heart. I pulled my right arm back. I reached for the power. Not the cold, malice-filled well of a demon, but the burning, golden torch of one for all. I grabbed it, and it flooded me. It was excruciating. It wasn't a stream, it was a dam breaking. Red, glowing veins erupted across my right arm, tearing through the fabric of my tracksuit. The power surged, wild and uncontrollable, seeking an outlet. But as the power rushed through my shoulder, it brushed against something else. A negative emotion, a distant yet familiar energy, the energy of a presence, once dormant, reacted to the sudden, violent intrusion of this foreign power. It didn't fight it. It coated it. The lightning crackling around my arm wasn't just yellow. It was streaked with jagged, malevolent black flashes that devoured the light. I punched the air in front of the robot. The impact was silent for a fraction of a second. Space seemed to warp around my fist. Then the world turned white. A shock wave of compressed air exploded from my fist. It hit the zero-pointer with the force of a tactical nuke. The massive metal face didn't just dent, it caved in on itself. The force traveled backward, crumpling the thick neck, shattering the internal chassis, and blowing the entire upper torso of the robot backward. The sound caught up a moment later, a thunderclap that shattered windows for 10 blocks. The zero-pointer, 1,000 tons of steel, was lifted off the ground and thrown back. It crashed into the street with an earth-shattering thud, smoke billowing from its ruined head. I hung in the air, the momentum of the punch keeping me suspended for one impossible second. Whoa! I whispered. Then the pain hit. It was white-hot agony. My right arm was purple, twisted at an unnatural angle. My fingers were broken, hanging like loose strings. The recoil of using 100% of one for all amplified by the dark energy had pulverized my bones. Gravity took hold. I began to fall. Oh no. I looked down. It was a long way down. My legs. I need to land. I have to use the power on my legs to cushion. I tried to summon the power again. Nothing. My body was screaming. The tank was empty. The shock had short-circuited my nervous system. I'm going to die. I just saved her, and now I'm going to be a splatter on the pavement. The ground rushed up to meet me. A hand touched my cheek. Release. My stomach lurched. I stopped falling inches from the ground, suspended in zero gravity. Urarika, her face covered in dust and sweat, pressed her fingertips together. She looked like she was about to vomit rainbows. I dropped the last few inches to the concrete with a dull thud. Are you okay? She gasped, clutching her stomach. I lay there, staring at the artificial sky. My arm was a ruin. My legs were trembling uncontrollably. But I was alive. Time's up. Present Mick's voice echoed across the city. The siren wailed, signaling the end. I couldn't move. I could only drag my left hand over the pavement, fingers scraping the stone. One point. I rasped, tears leaking from the corners of my eyes. Felice? One point. Darkness crept into the edges of my vision. The other students were gathering around, their voices hushed, reverent. Did you see that? He took down the zero-pointer in one hit. But did he have a strength quirk? Or a reinforcement quirk? His arm. Look at his arm. It's destroyed. It looks like a grape. That wasn't a normal punch. That was scary. Did you see the black lightning? Footsteps approached. A small, elderly woman in a lab coat and a syringe-shaped helmet hobbled through the crowd, using a cane. Make way, recovery girl grumbled. You kids and your reckless abandon. She looked down at me, her eyes widening slightly behind her visor. My goodness. You really went all out, didn't you, Sonny? She sighed, her lips puckering. It sounds like you have a self-sacrifice quirk. Those are rare these days. But dangerous. And this injury. She peered closer at my arm. The bone is powder. And there's a lingering energy here. She shook her head and leaned down to kiss my forehead. Smooch. A wave of warmth washed over me, draining the last of my stamina. My eyelids grew heavy as lead. The sharp agony in my arm dulled to a distant throb. Rest now, she said softly. As I drifted off, plunging into the black water of unconsciousness, I felt the presence inside me again. It wasn't mocking this time. You broke yourself, the demon mused, his tone unreadable, almost contemplative. A glass cannon. How droll. I felt a ripple of amusement in the dark. But that power, that was not just yours, brat. That was accumulation. A stockpile of souls. He seemed almost pleased. Maybe this era won't be so boring after all. The creature then closed his eyes. 1 week later, I sat in my room, staring at the ceiling. The silence of the apartment was suffocating. My arm had healed mostly. Recovery girl had fixed the bones, but the deep, phantom ache remained a reminder of the power I couldn't control. I hadn't heard from Yue. I hadn't heard from All Might. I had failed. I knew it. I had 28 villain points. That wasn't terrible, but compared to the guys who got 40 or 50. And then I sacrificed my body and scored nothing on the 0-pointer. 0 points for the big one. A suicidal move for nothing. Izuku. Mom called from the hallway, her voice tentative. The mail is here. I didn't move. Izuku. It's from Yue. I bolted upright. I took the envelope with trembling hands. It was heavy, textured, expensive. I walked back to my room, locking the door behind me. I sat at my desk, the envelope staring at me like a judge. Do it. I tore it open. A small metal disc slid out and clattered onto the desk. Hollow projector? Bzzz. A beam of light shot up, forming a crisp screen in the air. I am here as a projection. All Might's face filled the screen. He was in his Silver Age costume, striking a pose, teeth gleaming. All Might. I gasped, nearly falling out of my chair. Young Midoriya. It has been a while. You might be wondering why I'm here. I have come to this town to work at UA. He coughed, glancing off screen, his smile faltering for a microsecond. Hurry it up? Okay. He looked back at the camera, his expression softening, losing the performative edge. You passed the written exam with flying colors. But the practical. 28 villain points. That is a low score, young Midoriya. Borderline failing. My heart stopped. The world grayed out. However, All Might leaned in, his blue eyes intense. Do you think a hero course would reject someone who saves others? That is not how we do things. A hero who ignores a cry for help is no hero at all. The screen shifted. A video played. It was Uraraka. She was standing in the faculty office, pleading with present Mike. She looked desperate. Please. That boy with the curly hair. He saved me. He gave up his points to save me. Can I give him some of mine? He's going to fail because of me. He smashed that giant robot. I covered my mouth, hot tears welling up and spilling over. You didn't just fight villains. All Might's voice returned, warm and proud. You inspired others. And in a hero society, saving people is the greatest metric of all. The screen flashed. A scoreboard appeared. Izuku Midoriya. A villain points, 28. Rescue points, 60. Total, 88 points. Rescue points. All Might shouted, punching the air. A hidden metric given by a panel of judges. And for your selfless act against the 0-pointer risking your own life when there was no reward you were awarded 60 points. 88 points. I was in the top 10. Come, young Midoriya. All Might reached a hand toward the screen, as if to pull me through. This is your Hero Academia. The projection faded. I sat there in the dark, the tears flowing freely now, soaking my shirt. I clenched my healed right hand into a fist, feeling the strength in it. I did it. I was going to U.A. And then, deep in the dark recesses of my soul, a strange sensation prickled on the back of my hand. I couldn't believe it. I looked down. A second mouth had formed on my hand, a slit opening in the flesh. It grinned, revealing sharp, jagged teeth and a tongue that tasted the air. "Hi," the mouth whispered, its voice raspy and audible only to me, yet louder than the sobbing. A gathering of strong souls. A banquet. I froze, wiping my eyes. "I look forward to it," the mouth said. The mouth vanished into skin. "This isn't All Might's powers. Is it the finger? Did I actually gain? No, it's just my imagination." UA High School. The hero course. The hallways were wider than my old school, the windows taller, the very air seemingly filtered to a higher standard of oxygen. I walked through the massive door labeled 1A, my heart doing a nervous butterfly dance in my chest. The uniform felt different. Not just the material, which was high quality, but the fit. The tailor had taken my measurements 3 times, looking perplexed. My neck was thicker, my shoulders broader than the average 15-year-old. The buttons strained slightly across my chest, not from fat, but from the dense, compressed muscle that now coated my frame like armor. I opened the door. "Remove your foot from the desk." "It's comfortable." "And who are you to tell me what to do, Four Eyes?" I froze. Of course. Tenya Ida, the strict glasses-wearing boy from the exam, was chopping his hand at Katsuki Bakugo, who was currently disrespecting school property with casual arrogance. "I am Tenya Ida from Semi-Private Academy." "Semi? A stuck-up elite, huh? I'll have fun crushing you." "Crushing? That's cruel. Do you truly aim to be a hero?" I tried to sneak in unnoticed, but Ida's sensors were apparently calibrated to anxiety. He spun around. "You." He marched toward me. "The messy-haired boy. You're Midoriya, correct?" The room went quiet. Bakugo's head snapped toward me, his eyes narrowing into red slits. "I overheard Present Mike," Ida said, grabbing my hand and shaking it vigorously. "You perceived the true nature of the practical exam while the rest of us were distracted by the superficial scoring system. I misjudged you completely. I hate to admit it, but you are the better student." No, I didn't really." I stammered, sweating. I couldn't tell him I just ran in because I was terrified of dying and a voice in my head told me to prove my worth. "Deku," Bakugo growled, standing up. Smoke curled from his palms. "How the hell did you get in? And what the hell did you do to your arm?" "It healed," I said, shielding myself instinctively. "If you're here to make friends, pack up and leave." The voice came from the floor. We all looked. A yellow sleeping bag lay in the doorway like a giant caterpillar. A face peered out, framed by messy black hair and bloodshot eyes. He unzipped the bag and stood up, revealing a disheveled man in black fatigues. "It took you 8 seconds to quiet down," he muttered, checking a stopwatch. "Time is limited. You kids aren't rational enough." He reached into his sleeping bag and pulled out a blue gym uniform. "I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. Put these on and head to the PE grounds immediately." The PE grounds. The sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue. The air was crisp. It was a perfect day for exercise. "A quirk apprehension test?" the class shouted in unison. "What about the entrance ceremony? The orientation?" Uraraka asked, looking panicked. "If you're going to be a hero, you don't have time for such leisurely events," Aizawa drawled, turning his back to us. UA's selling point is freedom of style. That applies to the teachers as well. He looked over his shoulder, his gaze cold. Softball throw. Standing long jump. 50-meter dash. Endurance running. Grip strength. Upper body training. Seated toe touch. Sit-ups. You did these in middle school without using your quirks. Today you'll use them. He pointed at Bakugo. "Bakugo, How far could you throw a softball in middle school? 67 meters. Try it with your quirk. Bakugo stepped into the circle. He grinned, a savage expression that promised violence. He wound up, his arm muscles tensing. Die! An explosion propelled the ball into the stratosphere. Aizawa held up his device. 705.2 meters. Whoa! That looks fun, someone shouted. We can use our quirks as much as we want? Aizawa's expression darkened. The atmosphere shifted from tough teacher to executioner. Fun. You say? He lowered the device. You have 3 years to become a hero. Will you have an attitude like that the whole time? He smiled, a wide, terrifying expression that didn't reach his eyes. All right. Whoever comes in last place in all 8 tests will be judged to have no potential, and will be punished with expulsion. The class erupted in protests. That's unfair. It's the first day. Natural disasters, big accidents, selfish villains, Aizawa recited. Calamity is always unfair. Heroes are the ones who reverse those situations. If you wanted to go to a fun burger joint with your friends, you're in the wrong place. He swept his gaze over us. Welcome to the Department of Heroics. I swallowed hard. Expulsion. If I got expelled, All Might's effort, the training, it would all be for nothing. Don't be pathetic, the demon inside murmured. Show them the vessel is not made of glass. Test 1, 50-meter dash. I was paired against Ida. I'll see you at the finish line, Ida said, revving the engines in his calves. Blue flames sputtered. On your mark, the machine droned. Get set. Gunshot. Ida was a rocket. He vanished in a blur of motion. I didn't use one for all. I didn't know how to control it yet. If I used it in my legs, I'd blow them off. So I just ran. I dug my toes into the dirt and pushed. The ground cratered slightly under the impact. My muscles, honed by hauling trash and fortified by the passive leakage of a foreign energy, fired like hydraulic pistons. Ida crossed the line. 3.04 seconds. I crossed a heartbeat later. 4.20 seconds. I skidded to a stop, dust billowing around my sneakers. Ida turned, his eyes wide behind his glasses. 4.2 seconds? Without a speed quirk? That is. Olympian level. He's fast. Uraraka cheered. I looked at my hands. 4.2 seconds. That was fast. Faster than any normal human should be. It wasn't All Might speed, but it was Predator speed. Bakugo was watching from the sidelines, his face unreadable. He wasn't yelling. He was staring at me like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve. Test 2, grip strength. I took the hand dynamometer. I squeezed. Beep. 210 kilograms. Whoa. 540 kilos? Someone yelled next to me. It was a tall boy with multiple arms. You're a beast, Shoji. I looked at it wasn't mutant level, but for a plain-looking hand, it was crushing. It was enough to snap a human neck like a twig. The thought came unbidden. I shook it away. Test 3, standing long jump. I cleared the sandbox entirely. I didn't use one for all. I just jumped. It felt like gravity had lost its hold on me for a second. Test 4, repeated side steps. This was harder. My Netta, the small purple boy, was bouncing like a pinball. I moved fast, blurring side to side, my stamina seemingly endless. I was doing well. I wasn't in last place. In fact, based purely on physical stats, I was probably in the top 5. But then came the final test. Test 5, ball throw. Uraraka Achiko, Aizawa called. She stepped up, touched the ball, and threw it. It floated up, and kept going. Aizawa showed the screen. Infinity. Impossible, the class gasped. Midoriya Izuku. My name hung in the air. I walked to the circle. This was it. Running fast and jumping high could be explained away as physical training to an extent. But in a world of quirks, I needed to show power. I needed to show All Might that I could use his gift. I held the ball. It felt light. If I use 100%, I'll break my arm again, I thought. Just like the exam. And then I'll be useless for the rest of the tests. Aizawa was watching me. His eyes were bored, dry. But if I don't use it, I'll just get a decent score. Not a hero score. I took a deep breath. Just a smash. A tiny smash. Maybe I can focus it? I winded up. I channeled one for all. The red veins appeared. The lightning crackled, blackened by the cursed taint. Power flooded my arm. I threw the ball. There was no sonic boom. There was no explosion of air. The ball flew about 46 meters and landed with a pathetic plop. Huh. I froze. My arm didn't hurt. The power. It had vanished right at the release point. I tried to use it. I whispered. I erased your quirk. I turned. Aizawa stood there, his hair defying gravity, floating in a jagged halo around his head. The scarf around his neck was floating too. His eyes were glowing a piercing red. That entrance exam, Aizawa said, his voice low and dangerous. It wasn't rational. Even if you have the power to destroy a tank, if you shatter your own body in the process, you're just a liability. He walked closer. The air grew cold. You can't control it, can you? Do you intend to become incapacitated again and have someone save you? No. That's not. Aizawa's scarf shot out, wrapping around me, pulling me close. His face was inches from mine. From what I see, you have two options. Break your body and be useless, or don't use it and be mediocre. He blinked. In that split second, his quirk activated again. He looked into my eyes. And he stopped. Aizawa had used his erasure on hundreds of villains. He had looked into the eyes of murderers, psychopaths, and monsters. He was used to seeing defiance, fear, or madness. But when he looked into the eyes of Izuku Midoriya, he saw something else. For a fraction of a second, the boy's green iris seemed to split. A second pair of eyes, slit-pupilled and glowing with a malevolent crimson light, opened on the boy's cheeks in a spectral overlay. Aizawa felt a chill run down his spine, a primal reaction he hadn't felt in years. It wasn't the fear of a powerful quirk. It was the feeling of standing next to a predator in the dark. What is that? The vision vanished as quickly as it came. The boy was just a boy again, trembling in his scarf. Aizawa released him, stepping back. He rubbed his eyes, blinking away the dryness and the sudden, irrational dread. I've returned your quirk, Aizawa said, his voice slightly strained. You have 2 throws left. Hurry up. He walked back to the sidelines, keeping his back to the class, his hand gripping the capture scarf tightly. That presence. It wasn't a quirk mutation. Felt like something else. I stood in the circle, rubbing my neck. He erased it. But for a second he looked terrified, I thought. What did he see? I looked at my hand. I couldn't use 100%. And I couldn't use 0%. I thought about the feeling during the beach training. The way this foreign energy coated my muscles, reinforcing them. The way one for all felt like water rushing through a pipe. Don't try to be a fire hose, I told myself. Be a pressure washer. Focus it. I picked up the ball. I entered the throwing stance. He's gonna fail, I heard someone whisper. Of course he is, Bakugo muttered. He's a quirkless loser. I channeled the power. Not into my whole arm. Just into the tip of my index finger. One for all. Plus, I drew on the dark reserve. The foreign energy flowed, mixing with the stockpile. It hardened my skin, reinforcing the bone. I snapped my finger at the last second. The air exploded. A shockwave blasted dust into the faces of my classmates. The ball shot out like a railgun round, tearing through the air with a high-pitched shriek. It vanished into the sky. I clutched my hand. My finger was purple. Throbbing. But it wasn't broken. It was just heavily bruised. The reinforcement held. Beep. Aizawa held up the device. 705.3 meters. I turned to the teacher, clutching my throbbing finger, tears pricking my eyes but a grin breaking across my face. I can still move, sensei. Aizawa looked at the score. Then he looked at me. The fear from moments ago was gone, replaced by a calculating, heavy gaze. 705.3, someone whispered. He beat Bakugo by 0.1 meters? Silence. Then an explosion. I flinched as Bakugo launched himself at me, explosions popping in his hands. What the hell was that? Tell me what's going on, you bastard. You were quirkless. You were a pebble. He was fast. He was going to kill me. Suddenly, the scarf wrapped around him. Gah! Bakugo choked, his explosions dying out. My eyes are dry, Aizawa groaned, holding the scarf taut. Don't make me use my quirk so much. It gives me dry eye. Let me go. Bakugo thrashed. He's cheating. He's lying. We're wasting time, Aizawa said, releasing him. Midoriya, go back to the group. Next. I scurried back, avoiding Bakugo's murderous glare. Uraraka was beaming. That was amazing. Your finger looks hurt though. I'm fine, I whispered, holding my hand. I looked over at Aizawa. He was staring at his clipboard, but I could feel his attention on me. It wasn't the look of a teacher proud of a student. It was the look of a pro hero watching a potential threat. The results. The sun was setting by the time we finished. I was exhausted. My finger throbbed with every heartbeat. Here are the results, Aizawa said, projecting a hologram. The total is simply the aggregate of your scores. I looked at the list. Momo Yaoyorozu, Shoto Todoroki, Katsuki Bakugo, Izuku Midoriya. 6th place. I blinked. 6th. I looked down the list. Ito was 4th. Uraraka was 10th. At the bottom, Minoru Mineta. By the way, Aizawa said, turning off the projection. The expulsion was a lie. Ha-ya, the class screamed. It was a logical ruse to draw out your upper limits, Aizawa said with a creepy grin. That was obvious, the tall girl with the ponytail, Yaoyorozu, said. If you thought about it calmly, you'd realize he wouldn't expel a student on the first day. I didn't realize it. I whispered, clutching my chest. The relief was overwhelming. That's it, Aizawa said, walking away. There are handouts in the classroom. Midoriya, have recovery girl look at your finger. He paused, glancing back at me one last time. Don't get cocky, kid. You have a long way to go. Faculty office. Aizawa sat at his desk, staring at the student file for Izuku Midoriya. So? All Might asked, leaning against the doorframe in his skeletal form. How was he? Did you expel him? No, Aizawa said, not looking up. He has potential, though his control is abysmal. I told you. Aizawa didn't mention the vision. He didn't mention the spectral eyes or the feeling of dread. He tapped his pen on the desk. Izuku Midoriya, Aizawa thought. Registered quirk, superpower. Origin, late bloomer. It was clean. Too clean. Aizawa reached into his drawer and pulled out a small notebook. He opened it to a fresh page and wrote. Subject, Midoriya. Observation, anomaly detected during erasure. Possible secondary personality? Vestige? Danger level, unknown. Keep an eye on him, All Might, Aizawa said softly. Of course. All Might beamed. He's my successor after all. Aizawa closed the file. Successor? Or something else? Then I lay in bed, flexing my bruised finger. It was already turning a nasty shade of yellow. It worked, I thought. I stayed. I survived. You were sloppy. I sat up. The room was empty. The voice came from my own mouth, but it wasn't me speaking. My cheek twitched, and I felt the skin split, a phantom sensation that was all too real. A small mouth had formed on my cheek. I rushed to the mirror. I wasn't imagining this, and there it was. A small, jagged maw on my left cheek. An eye opened below my own left eye, staring back at me in the reflection. That teacher, the demon's voice rasped from my. He saw me. I froze. What? Aizawa-sensei. What do you mean he saw you? He has a perceptive soul. When he shut off your borrowed power, he peered into the abyss. He flinched. The eye on my cheek narrowed. It was amusing. But warn him, Brett. If he tries to look too deep again, I might just blind him. The mouth closed. The eye vanished. My skin was smooth again. I touched my cheek, trembling. First day of school. And I was already walking a tightrope between being a hero and becoming a monster. I have to be careful, I whispered to the empty room. I have to be better. Outside, the moon hung high and full, indifferent to the troubles of men and curses. Combat training. I whispered, staring at the numbered suitcase in my hands. Costume 18. The locker room was a flurry of activity. The other boys were changing, laughter and excitement bouncing off the tiled walls. Kirishima was showing off his gears, Mineta was vibrating with anxiety, or something worse, and Ito was meticulously polishing his armor. I opened my case. My mother had made this. I sent her the sketches, crude, amateurish drawings of a hero who smiled and saved everyone. But in the 10 months of All Might's Hell training, my body had changed. The measurements I sent originally were for a skinny, frightened boy. The measurements I sent last month were for a heavyweight fighter. I pulled out the jumpsuit. It was black. The fabric was thick, reinforced with protective padding I hadn't asked for, but Mom must have sensed I'd need it. The gloves were black, sturdy. The respirator mask. Well, it looked a bit goofy, like a smile. But there was a dark forest green hood. It was supposed to be long, bunny-eared hood intended to mimic All Might's hair. But I guess the fashion department wasn't able to do it. I pulled the suit on. It was tight, hugging the dense musculature of my chest and thighs. I zipped it up. It felt like a second skin. I pulled the red belt tight. Midoriya. Ida called out, looking like a sleek white knight engine. We must hurry. We cannot be late for All Might's lesson. Coming, I said. I looked in the mirror one last time. I didn't put the mask on. I didn't pull the hood up yet. I just looked at my face. The scar Bakugo had mentioned the metaphorical one of being felt like it was fading, replaced by the faint, throbbing memory of the mouth that had appeared on my cheek the night before. I'm not just Deku anymore, I thought, slipping my red sneakers on. I'm the vessel. Ground Beta. We emerged from the dark tunnel into the bright sunlight of the mock city. They say the clothes make the man, young men and ladies. All Might's voice boomed as he stood hands on hips, his cape fluttering heroically in the wind. Be fully aware. From now on, you are heroes. He scanned the class, his eyes lingering on me for a fraction of a second. You all look cool. Now, shall we begin, you zygotes? I adjusted my gloves, feeling self-conscious. Uraraka walked up to me, looking like a space-age rescue worker in her pink and black suit. Oh, Deku, she chirped. That looks cool. It's very down to earth. Why, yours looks great too, Uraraka. I stammered, blushing. Practical. I should have written my request better, she lamented, scratching her head. It ended up being skin-tight. It's embarrassing. Mineta gave a thumbs up from the background. I ignored him. Now. All Might pulled out a script. Here is the situation. The villains have hidden a nuclear weapon somewhere in their hideout. The heroes are trying to dispose of it. The heroes must either catch the villains or retrieve the nuclear weapon within the time limit. The villains must either protect the weapon or catch the heroes. Teams will be determined by drawing lots. I reached into the box. I'm Team A2. Uraraka cheered, showing her ball. Destiny. I smiled. First up. All Might announced, pulling 2 ball from the villain and hero boxes. These 2 teams. Heroes, Team A, Midoriya and Uraraka. Villains, Team D, Bakugo and Ida. My stomach dropped. Of course. It had to be him. I looked across the crowd. Bakugo stood there in his costume, massive grenade gauntlets, black tank top, explosion-themed mask. He wasn't looking at All Might. He was staring directly at me, his eyes burning with a mixture of hatred and confusion. Team D, head inside. All Might commanded. Team A, you have 5 minutes to plan before infiltration. Inside the building. The halls were dimly lit, the concrete cold and industrial. I crouched near the entrance, tying my laces tighter. Uraraka, I said, my voice low. Bakugo is going to come for me. He won't care about the bomb. He won't care about the test. He just wants to crush me. Uraraka looked concerned. But isn't that bad for their team? It is. And that's our advantage. I stood up, rolling my shoulders. I'll draw his attention. You go around and find the weapon. Ida is serious. He'll stay with the bomb. If it's just you against Ida, you have a chance. But can you handle Bakugo? She asked. He's scary. I touched my chest. The second heartbeat was slow, rhythmic. I can handle him, I said. And for the first time in my life, I believed it. Indoor anti-personnel battle training. Start. We move. We entered through a second-story window. The hallway was narrow, filled with pillars. We moved silently, checking corners. My senses were dialed to 11. I could hear the wind outside. I could smell the dust in the air. And I could hear crackling. Get down. I shoved Uraraka aside just as the wall exploded. Boom. Debris and smoke filled the corridor. A figure emerged from the dust, a demonic silhouette with glowing red eyes. Come here, Deku. Bakugo lunged. He swung his right arm, a massive hook aimed directly at my face. In the past, I would have flinched. I would have closed my eyes and waited for the pain. But I wasn't that kid anymore. Time seemed to slow. I saw the shift in his weight. I saw the spark in his palm before the explosion ignited. I dropped under the swing. The explosion detonated above my head, singeing the ears of my hood, but I was untouched. I stepped in. Fighting usually meant keeping distance. But the style that felt natural to me now, the instincts that bled from the depths of my soul screamed, close the gap. I grabbed Bakugo's outstretched arm with my left hand. I planted my foot between his legs. What? Bakugo gasped. I grabbed the fabric of his tank top with my right hand. Shoulder throw. I torqued my hips. Using his own momentum and my enhanced strength, I flipped him. Slam. The entire building seemed to shudder. I slammed Katsuki Bakugo into the concrete floor. The air left his lungs in a wheezing gasp. His back hit the ground so hard a spiderweb fracture appeared in the cement. I stood over him, panting slightly. I'm not just a pebble you can kick around anymore, Kaken, I said, my voice trembling but firm. You. Bakugo coughed, his eyes wide with shock. Read my moves. I've been watching you for years, I lied. It wasn't just observation. It was raw speed. Go, Uraraka. I shouted. Uraraka scrambled past the stunned Bakugo. Right. She disappeared down the hall. Bakugo lay there for a second, processing the impossible. Deku useless, weak, crying. Deku had just put him on his butt. Don't. Bakugo whispered. He started to rise. The shock was replaced by something hotter. Something uglier. Don't look down on me. He exploded off the floor, launching himself at me with a blast from his palms. I'm just getting started. Observation room. Whoa! Kirishima yelled, gripping the railing. Did you see that? Midoriya just body slammed Bakugo. That was a textbook judo throw, Sato noted. But the speed. Bakugo didn't even react. Midoriya's movement is sharp, Yaoyorozu analyzed, her eyes narrowed. He didn't use his quirk, did he? That was pure martial arts. Indeed. All Might watched the screen, his smile tight. Young Midoriya. All Might thought. That style. It's vicious. He didn't hesitate to slam his childhood friend into the concrete. It's efficient, but it lacks the hesitation of a normal civilian. Aizawa stood in the back, arms crossed. He saw the crack in the floor. He's holding back, Aizawa realized. If he had used his strength to punch instead of throw, Bakugo's ribs would be powder. Fight. Die. 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 Bakugo was a storm of fire and noise. He swung again and again, using his explosions to accelerate his fists. I bobbed and weaved. Right hook. Left jab. But I caught a punch on my forearm. The explosion scorched my sleeve, burning my skin. It hurt. It hurt a lot. But the adrenaline and the cursed energy reinforcing my body dulled it to a manageable throb. Is that all you've got? Bakugo screamed, vaulting over me and blasting my back. I stumbled forward, smoke rising from my costume. You're hiding it, aren't you? Bakugo roared. You have a quirk. You tricked me. You made me look like an idiot for years. I didn't trick you. I yelled back, spinning around. I didn't have it. I got it recently. Liar. He charged again. He was losing his cool. His movements were wide, angry. Opportunity. I stepped inside his guard again. I drove my knee into his gut. Thud. It was a heavy, meaty impact. Bakugo gagged, saliva flying from his mouth. He doubled over. I grabbed the back of his head. Don't crush his skull. Subdue. I slammed his face into my knee. Bakugo reeled back, blood streaming from his nose. He staggered, looking at me through hazy eyes. He wheezed. Since when? Do you fight like a villain? I froze. Like a villain? I looked at my hands. I wasn't using one for all. I was brawling. I was hurting him. It feels good, the presence inside whispered. To dominate. To stand above. I shook my head violently. That's not me. Bakugo saw the hesitation. He grinned. He pulled the pin on his gauntlet. If you're so strong, then take this. Young Bakugo, stop. All Might's voice blared over the speakers. Are you trying to kill him? He won't die if he dodges. He aimed the gauntlet directly at me. The hallway was narrow. There was nowhere to run. This foreign no. Cursed energy. It surged. It wasn't a trickle this time. It was a flood. Sensing the imminent threat of incineration, the demon's power reacted defensively. It flooded my skin, hardening it, making my flesh dense as steel. Boom. The blast was blinding. It consumed the hallway, blowing out the windows and shaking the entire building. Fire engulfed me. Midoriya. The smoke hung heavy in the air. The heat was intense. Bakugo panted, lowering his arm. Gotcha. The smoke cleared. I was standing there. My costume was shredded. The right sleeve was gone. The hood was burned half off. My skin was red, smoking, and covered in soot. But I was standing. I held my arms up in a cross block. The skin on my forearms was charred, but underneath the burn, there was no major tissue damage. I hadn't been vaporized. I hadn't even been knocked down. I lowered my arms. My eyes were shadowed by the remains of my hood. Is that? I rasped, my voice sounding rough. That the best you can do? Bakugo took a step back. For the first time in his life, he looked at me and felt true fear. Monster, he whispered. Midoriya, are you all right? All Might shouted. I'm fine, I said. Just angry. I tapped my earpiece. Uraraka. Status. I found it. But Ida saw me. He's cleaned out the room. I can't get close. I'm heading up, I said. I looked at Bakugo. He was trembling with rage. He was going to fire again. I don't have time to play with you, Kaken, I said coldly. I channeled one for all. The red veins appeared on my right leg. The cursed energy coated it, turning the lightning black and green. I vanished. Bakugo blinked. I was gone. I appeared behind him. Sleep. I chopped him on the back of the neck. Bakugo's eyes rolled back. He collapsed. I didn't look back. I sprinted for the stairs. The weapon room. You cannot defeat me, villain. Ida shouted, striking a pose in front of the papier-mâché bomb. I have prepared for your arrival. Uraraka was hiding behind a pillar. He's too fast. I can't touch him to make him float. Uraraka. I burst into the room. Deku. Bakugo. Handled. Handled. Ida gasped. You defeated Bakugo? Impossible. Uraraka. I yelled, crouching down. Grab the pillar. Huh. Just do it. I looked at the ceiling. There were 5 floors above us. One for all, 100%. My arm screamed in protest before I even threw the punch. It remembered the pain. Reinforce it, I commanded the demon inside. Don't let me break. The shadows on my arm deepened. It looked like I was wearing a gauntlet of pure darkness. Detroit. I punched the air. Dot smash. The pressure was vertical. It punched a hole through the air itself. The floor shattered. The ceiling shattered. The roof shattered. A column of wind blasted upward, tearing through the building like a drill. Whoa! Ida was blown backward by the wind pressure, tumbling end over end. Debris rained down. Now, Uraraka. Right. She slapped the pillar she was holding with her quirk, making it weightless. Then she swung it like a baseball bat. Home run comet. The debris flying at her was batted away, creating a path. She leaped through the chaos, swimming through the air. Ida was pinned against the wall by the wind pressure. I can't move. Uraraka landed on the weapon. Recovered, she squeaked. Hero team. Wins. The siren wailed. I fell to my knees. My arm was smoking. It was purple, bruised, and swollen, but it wasn't broken. The bones were intact. The cursed reinforcement had acted like a splint, holding my structure together against the recoil. I looked up through the hole I had made in the roof. I could see the sky. One, I whispered. Then I vomited. The review. We stood in a line outside the building. Bakugo was awake, but he was silent. He stared at the ground, his shoulders slumped. Well, All Might said, looking a bit nervous. The MVP of this battle was young Ida. Ida blinked. Me? Why is that? All Might asked. Does anyone know? I do, sir, Yayarosa said, raising her hand. She launched into a perfect deconstruction. Ida was the only one acting in character. Bakugo was reckless. I was destructive and reckless. Uraraka was unfocused. Midoriya's final attack was impressive, she noted, looking at me with a critical eye. But destroying the stronghold you are trying to protect or infiltrate is counterintuitive. And that black energy. She paused. Whatever that reinforcement technique was, it saved his arm. But it felt ominous. I flinched. Young Midoriya, All Might said, putting a hand on my shoulder. We need to work on your control. But good work. I looked at Bakugo. He turned around and started walking away. Kaken. I called out. He stopped. I'm still learning. I shouted. I'm borrowing this power. It's not fully mine yet. But one day, I'll make it mine. Bakugo turned his head. Tears were streaming down his face, his expression twisted in humiliation. You beat me, he snarled. That's all that matters today. But don't think this is over. I'm going to be number one. You hear me, Deku? I won't lose to you again. He walked off. I watched him go. He hates me, I thought. More than ever. He has spirit, a voice echoed in my head. I froze. No one else seemed to hear it. The loud one. He has the appetite of a predator, but the DSPLN of a child. He would make a fine meal. Shut up, I thought fiercely. Don't talk about my friends like food. Friends? Sukuna chuckled, a sound like grinding stones. Keep telling yourself that, brat. In the end, there are only the strong and the dead. I clenched my fist. I had won the battle. I had survived the test. But the war for my own soul was just beginning. The nurse's office. Recovery girl sighed, looking at my arm. It's not broken this time, she muttered. Just severe bruising and muscle strain. Whatever you did, it saved your bones. She kissed my arm. Smooch. But be careful, she warned. Your body is incredibly dense. Your muscle fibers are tougher than normal. But that just means when you do break, you'll break harder. I know, I said. Thank you. I walked out of the school as the sun began to set. Midoriya. Ida and Uraraka were waiting for me at the gate. We waited for you. Uraraka smiled. Let's walk to the station together. That was quite the match, Ida said, chopping the air. Though your methods were unorthodox. I smiled. For a moment, the darkness inside me felt far away. Just 3 friends walking home. But from the roof of the main building, 2 figures watched. He's adapting fast, All Might said, now in his skinny form. Too fast, Aizawa muttered. His physical stats are illogical. He moves like he's been fighting for decades. And that aura. Aizawa looked at All Might, then whispers. Are you sure you told me everything about One for All? All Might hesitated. It's a power that stockpiles energy. Sometimes. It stockpiles the will of those who came before. Will. Aizawa narrowed his eyes. Let's hope that's all it is. He turned and walked away. Because if that boy is harboring something else, we might have a problem bigger than villains. Aizawa didn't know how right he was. Under the twilight sky, the shadow cast by Izuka Midoriya seemed to stretch unnaturally long, forming 4 arms instead of 2. The morning sun hit the windows of UA High, casting long, geometric shadows across the classroom of 1A. It was a deceptively peaceful start to the day, masking the turmoil that had been brewing in my gut since the battle trial. My right arm felt heavy. Not heavy in the sense of weight, but heavy with presence. Recovery Girl had healed the rest of the bruising, muttering about how my muscle fibers were unnaturally dense, and how my bone structure seemed to have reinforced itself prior to the impact. She had looked at me with a mixture of professional curiosity and mild concern, but she hadn't asked the question I feared most. What are you? I sat at my desk, gripping a mechanical pencil until the plastic creaked. Don't think about it, I told myself. Don't think about the mouth on your hand. Don't think about the voice in the mirror. Midoriya. I jumped, nearly snapping the pencil. Eijiro Kirishima was leaning over my desk, his shark-toothed grin wide and friendly. Behind him, Hantasiro and Denki Kaminari were hovering, looking at me with eager eyes. Man, that fight yesterday was insane. Kirishima said, slapping my back. The way you handled Bakugo? That throw? I watched the replay like 10 times. It was so manly. Yeah, Siro added, grinning. You didn't even use your quirk until the end, right? You were just tossing him around with judo. I thought you were gonna be a power type, but you're like a martial arts master. And no, not a master, I stammered, rubbing the back of my neck. My heart rate spiked not from fear, but from the unfamiliarity of popularity. I analyze people. I knew how Kaken moves, so I just reacted. Reacted? Kaminari laughed, leaning back against the desk. Dude, you tanked an explosion to the face. You looked like a Terminator walking out of that smoke. It was terrifying but also kinda awesome. I forced a smile. Terminator. Monster. Villain. The words Bakugo had spat at me echoed in the back of my mind. They didn't know. They saw a hero in training. They didn't see the thing that was currently dormant in the marrow of my bones, waiting for a banquet. Settle down, a tired voice drawled from the doorway. The class instantly scrambled to their seats. Aizawa-sensei shuffled to the podium, looking more like a reanimated corpse than a pro-hero. He dropped a stack of papers on the desk with a heavy thud. I've looked over your grades and your evaluations from the battle trial, he said, his eyes scanning the room. They lingered on Bakugo, then me. Bakugo. Bakugo, who had been staring sullenly out the window, didn't turn his head. You're talented, Aizawa said, his voice flat. But stop acting like a child. You wasted time sulking after your loss. If you have time to be angry, use it to get stronger. Don't let your pride stagnate your growth. Bakugo's shoulders tensed. I know, he growled, his voice low. And Midoriya, Aizawa continued. I stiffened. Here it comes. He's going to expel me. He saw the eyes. He knows. You broke your arm again, Aizawa lied. I blinked. What? Or rather, you would have, if not for whatever reckless reinforcement technique you used, he said, his eyes narrowing slightly. You ended the match with minimal injuries, which is an improvement. But relying on a do-or-die attack that destroys the environment isn't heroic. Control your power before you hurt someone you're trying to save. Why, sir? I squeaked. Now, Aizawa sighed, rubbing his temples. I'm sorry to spring this on you, but we have important homeroom business today. The class tensed. Another test? More expulsion threats? You need to pick a class representative. The tension snapped. A normal school activity, everyone shouted in relief. Immediately, chaos erupted. Pick me. I want to be president. Kirishima yelled, raising his hand. I'll do it. Kaminari shouted. My campaign promise is shorter skirts for the girls. Silence, heathen. Jiro jammed an earphone jack into him. The position requires prestige. Aoyama sparkled. It must be me. I think I should do it. Mina Ishido waved her hands. I shrank into my seat. Leadership? I could barely lead myself out of a spiral of anxiety. The idea of standing in front of these incredible people with amazing, natural quirks and telling them what to do felt fraudulent. How could a vessel lead heroes? Silence, please. Tenya Ida's voice cut through the noise like a blade. He stood up, his hand raised high, vibrating with intensity. This is a serious responsibility, Ida declared, adjusting his glasses. Leading a group of heroes isn't just about popularity. It requires the trust of those around you. The only logical way to settle this is a democratic vote. But we've only known each other for 3 days. Tsuyu Azui pointed out, her finger on her chin. Everyone will just vote for themselves. That is precisely why whoever receives multiple votes will be the true choice. Ida argued. He turned to Aizawa. Is this acceptable, sensei? Aizawa was already zipping up his yellow sleeping bag. Do whatever you want. Just finish before my nap is over. The voting was quick. I wrote down a name, my hand trembling slightly. I didn't vote for myself. I couldn't. When the results were tallied on the chalkboard, my jaw dropped. Izuku Midoriya, 3 votes. Momo Yaoyorozu, 2 votes. H-ha. I stood up, knocking my chair back. 3. Why? Who voted for Deku? Bakugo roared from his seat, standing up. I bet it was you, round face. Uraraka whistled innocently, looking at the ceiling. 0 votes. Ida whispered, trembling as he sat frozen in his chair. I feared this. But it is the will of the people. You voted for someone else too, didn't you? Yaoyorozu asked him gently. I walked to the front of the class, my legs feeling like jelly. Yaoyorozu stood next to me, poised and elegant. I felt like a nervous child standing next to royalty. All right then, I stammered, looking at the sea of faces. I'll do my best. Do I deserve this? The thought nagged at me. They voted for the guy who smashed the ceiling. They voted for the guy who stood up to Bakugo. But they don't know the price I pay for that strength. The lunch rush cafeteria was a sensory overload. The smell of savory curry, fried pork, and steamed rice filled the air. The chatter of hundreds of students was a dull roar. I sat at a table with Uraraka and Ida, staring at my bowl of katsudon. My stomach rumbled a deep, cavernous sound that wasn't entirely mine. Eat, the presence whispered. I shuddered and took a bite of rice instead. You look worried, Dekuen, Uraraka said, taking a bite of her white rice. You're the rep now. You should be happy. I'm just not sure I'm cut out for it, I admitted, poking my pork cutlet. I mean, look at Ida-kun. He took charge immediately during the voting. He wears the uniform like he was born in it. Feel it? Like I'm playing dress up. Ida lowered his cup of water. You are too humble, Midoriya-kun. Your actions during the entrance exam and the battle trial showed quick thinking and courage. Those are the qualities of a leader. But Ida-kun, Uraraka chimed in, leaning forward. You were totally acting like a rich kid earlier. Are you, like, fancy? Ida sighed, a small smile playing on his lips. I didn't want it to affect how people see me. But yes, my family has been in the hero business for generations. I am the second son. Whoa! Uraraka's eyes sparkled. A legacy hero. Do you know the turbo hero, Ingenium? Ida asked, pride swelling in his voice. Ingenium. My otaku side took over instantly. Of course. He has 65 sidekicks working at his Tokyo agency. He's known for his strict adherence to the law and his incredible speed. Ida smiled a genuine, warm smile. He is my elder brother. He is a beloved hero who honors the rules and leads the people. I aspire to be just like him. That is why I was so strict about the voting. I wanted to prove I could lead like he does. He looked at me. But you, Midoriya, you realized what being a hero meant before anyone else. You moved when we froze. That is why I voted for you. I froze. You voted for me. Of course, Ida said. Guilt washed over me. Ida wanted to be like his brother, a noble, fast, righteous hero. I wanted to be like All Might, but inside me was something ancient and evil. I felt like I was deceiving them just by sitting here. "Thank you, Ida-kun," I whispered. "I'll try to." Oh. A siren cut through the cafeteria, loud and jarring. It was a sound that triggered a primal instinct run. "Security level 3 has been breached," a robotic voice announced. "All students, please evacuate immediately." Level 3. Ida stood up. "That means someone has infiltrated the school building." Panic. Instant, mindless panic. The students in the cafeteria surged toward the exit like a tidal wave. I was shoved forward, my tray clattering to the floor. "Wait, don't push," I yelled, but my voice was drowned out by the screaming. "Move! Move! Villains? Are the villains here? I don't want to die." I was crushed against the bodies of upperclassmen. An elbow hit my ribs. A knee knocked into my thigh. I grabbed Uraraka's hand as she was nearly swept away. "Uraraka-san. Hold on." "Deku-kun," she gasped, her face pale. I can't move." I looked around. It was chaos. People were trampling each other. The fear in the air was palpable, it tasted sour. And beneath the fear I felt something else. It was a sensation in the back of my skull. My vessel sense. Since the demon woke up, I had become sensitive to malice. To intent. I closed my eyes for a second, focusing on the disturbance. Where is the threat? I felt nothing. No killing intent. No dark, cursed energy like the sludge villain. Curiosity? Annoyance? I looked out the massive windows of the hallway we were being pushed through. Outside, the press was swarming the gates. Reporters were shoving microphones at the police. Just the media, I realized. There's no villains. It's just the press. I tried to shout, but the roar of the crowd was too loud. "Everyone, stop. It's okay." No one heard me. The panic was feeding on itself. "Use your voice," the demon whispered. "Roar. If I use that voice, I'll terrify them more." I looked at Ida. He was being crushed against the glass window, his face pressed against the pane. He saw the press too. He knew. "Ida-kun," I shouted, reaching out with my enhanced strength to shove a large third-year student aside. "Ida, tell them. It's just the press." Ida looked at me. He saw the desperation in my eyes. He nodded. He pointed to the exit sign above the door. "Uraraka-kun. Make me float." Uraraka understood instantly. She slapped Ida's hand. He pushed off the wall, soaring over the heads of the panicked mob. He grabbed the exit pipe, spinning around like a human propeller, his engines revving loud and clear. "Everyone." Ida's voice boomed, authoritative and calm. "Everything is fine." The crowd froze, looking up at the boy spinning on the ceiling. "It is just the media." Ida shouted. "There is no attack. We are students of UA. Behave in a way that befits the top hero school." The panic evaporated. The shame set in. The students calmed down, realizing there was no danger. I sighed, slumping against the wall. My heart was pounding, but the heavy, dark feeling in my gut settled. I looked up at Ida. He was commanding. He was logical. He was a leader. That, I thought, is what a class rep looks like. Back in the classroom, the atmosphere was relieved but exhausted. I stood at the podium, my hands gripping the wood. "So," I started. "About the class rep position." The class looked at me. "I think Ida-kun should do it," I said, my voice gaining strength. Ida blinked, surprised. "Midoriya?" "In the cafeteria today," I continued, looking him in the eye. I was just getting pushed around. I knew it was the press, but I couldn't stop everyone. But Ida-kun, he took charge. He unified everyone. He was a beacon. I smiled, a genuine, relieved smile. "That's what a leader is. So, I want to resign and nominate Tenya Ida." Kirishima slammed his fist on his desk. "I'm with Midoriya. Ida was awesome out there. Like a real pro." "Yeah," Kaminari agreed. He was kinda like the emergency exit sign personified. Aizawa woke up from his nap on the floor. "Whatever. Just decide so we can get on with it. Ida stood up, his face solemn. If that is the wish of the class, then I, Tenya Ida, will accept the position of class representative. As I walked back to my seat, Uraraka gave me a small thumbs up. You did good, Deku-kun. Thanks, I whispered. I sat down, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. I wasn't the leader. I was just a student. Just a hero in training. Or so I hoped. 2 days later. Today's hero basic training will be a little different, Aizawa announced, holding up a card with the word rescue on it. You'll be supervised by myself, All Might, and one other hero. Rescue? Kaminari looked excited. Like disaster relief? Exactly, Aizawa said. Floods, landslides, fires, etc. It's a trial of versatility. You can decide if you want to wear your costumes or not, as some of them might be ill-suited for the task. The training site is a bit far, so we'll be taking a bus. Rescue training. I muttered, clenching my fist. This was my chance to prove to myself and to All Might that I could save people without breaking. The bus ride was bumpy. I sat next to Azui or Tsuyu-chan, as she insisted, and Uraraka. The seating layout had us facing each other, which made avoiding eye contact impossible. Midoriya-chan, Tsuyu said bluntly. Weiss, Azui-san, I mean, Tsuyu-chan? I generally say what's on my mind, she said, her large eyes fixed on me. Your quirk. It's a lot like All Might's. My heart stopped. The bus seemed to go silent. Huh? I panicked, waving my hands frantically. Why you think so? I mean, All Might doesn't get hurt when he uses his, right? And I mess myself up all the time. It's just super strength. Lots of people have super strength. True, Kirishima chimed in from the seat across. All Might is in a league of his own. He doesn't break his bones. But still, having a simple strengthening quirk is awesome. You can do so much with it. He hardened his arm into jagged rock. My hardening is strong, but it looks kinda plain. It's not flashy like Bakugo's or Todoroki's. But it's pro-material. I said earnestly. Durability is super important for hero work. You think? Kirishima grinned. But if we're talking about flashy and strong, Tsuyu continued, it's gotta be Bakugo and Todoroki. Though Bakugo is so angry all the time, he probably won't be popular. What did you say, Frogface? Bakugo exploded from the back of the bus. I'll be the most popular hero there is. See? Tsuyu pointed. The bus erupted in laughter. I smiled watching them. This was nice. This was normal. We continued driving, the city giving way to the mountains. The road wound up a steep hill toward a massive dome structure in the distance. As the dome came into view, the unforeseen simulation joint, or USJ, a strange sensation washed over me. It started as a prickle at the base of my neck. Then it moved to my stomach. Thump. My heart skipped a beat. Are you okay, Deku-kun? Uraraka asked, leaning closer. You look pale. I'm fine, I said, putting a hand to my forehead. Just a bit of motion sickness, maybe. But it wasn't motion sickness. It was déjà vu. I looked out the window at the trees passing by. The dense foliage. The shadows between the trunks. Flash. For a split second, the view of the passing forest distorted. I wasn't on a bus anymore. I was 5 years old. I was small. I was running through the woods behind the park in Mizudafu. The smell of wet earth filled my nose. The sound of crickets was deafening. Why am I remembering this now? We're here, Aizawa announced. The bus hissed to a stop. We filed out, standing before the massive gates of the USJ. Waiting for us was the space hero, 13. Hello, everyone. I've been waiting for you, 13 said in their polite, bubbly voice. It's the space hero, 13. Uraraka squealed, vibrating with excitement. I stepped off the bus, my feet hitting the pavement. And then it hit me. It wasn't a memory triggered by sight. It was triggered by feeling. The air here. It felt separated from the world. Isolated. A domain of its own. My head began to throb. A sharp, piercing pain drilled into my temples. Thump, 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 The second heartbeat, the one I had grown used to, suddenly synchronized with my own. The box, a voice whispered. Not the demon's voice. My voice. My memory. My vision swam. The bright blue sky above the USJ flickered and turned a deep, blood red. I stumbled, grabbing Uraraka's shoulder for support. Deku-kun? I wasn't looking at Uraraka. I was looking past her. Past the gates. Past reality. I was back in the small wooden shrine I had found 10 years ago. The air was thick with dust and rot. There was a box on the altar, wrapped in old, yellowed talismans. I reached out. My small, 5-year-old hand trembled. Don't touch it, Izuku. Don't touch it. But I was so hungry. A hunger that wasn't for food. A hunger for significance. I opened the box. Inside lay a finger. Withered. Maroon. The nail was black and sharp like a knife. And as I looked at it, a name etched itself into my mind. A name I had forgotten. A name the demon had made me forget so he could incubate in peace. The pain in my head became blinding. My knees buckled. Midoriya. Ida's voice sounded miles away. I fell to the pavement, the world spinning. The name. It wasn't just a demon. It wasn't just a presence. It was a king. Ryaman. Deku. As darkness claimed me, the last thing I heard wasn't Uraraka's scream. It was a low, satisfied chuckle echoing from the depths of my own soul. Finally remembered, have you? The real fun begins. I hit the ground. Silence. Midoriya. Midoriya, please wake up. The voice was distant, muffled as if hearing it from underwater. It was warm, frantic, and laced with fear. My eyes snapped open. The blue sky of the USJ dome greeted me, static and artificial. Hovering above me was Uraraka's face, pale and wide-eyed. Her hands were hovering over my chest, unsure whether to shake me or perform CPR. Deku-kun, she gasped, relief washing over her features. Oh, thank goodness. You collapsed. Are you okay? I sat up, the movement sharp and sudden. My head spun, a residual throb pulsing behind my eyes. I remembered. The shrine. The box. The finger. Ryaman Sukuna. The name wasn't just a collection of syllables, it was a curse in itself. I looked at my hands. They were the same hands I had looked at this morning, but now they felt foreign. They were the hands that had unsealed a calamity. I'm okay, I lied, my voice raspy. Just light-headed. You scared us, man, Kirishima said, offering me a hand to pull me up. We thought you had a heat slide or something. Stand back, everyone. Aizawa-sensei's voice cut through the concern. He was staring down at the central plaza of the facility. This is bad. I followed his gaze. The lights in the massive dome flickered and died. The fountain in the center of the plaza sputtered, the water pressure failing. And then in the space between the fountain and the mountain zone, reality tore open. A small, purple dot appeared in the air. It expanded, swirling like a vortex of dark ink. A hand reached out. Pale, sickly skin, covered in disembodied hands clutching the arms, the neck, the face. A man stepped through. He was thin, looking frail, with messy, light blue hair. So 13 is here. The man scratched his neck, his voice dry and raspy. And Eraserhead is here as well. But, according to the schedule we retrieved the other day, All Might should be here. Behind him, the mist expanded. Dozens, then scores of figures began to pour out. Some were large, some small. Some held weapons, others manifested mutant quirks. Where is he? The man with the hands muttered. I went through all this trouble to bring this crowd. All Might, the symbol of peace. I want to crush him. The air in the USJ grew heavy. It wasn't just the killing intent of the villains. It was the sheer wrongness of their presence. Villains? Mineta shrieked, clutching his head. No way. There's no way they could get into a hero school. Teacher, what about the trespasser censors? Yaoyorozu asked, her voice trembling slightly. We have them, of course, 13 said, stepping forward. But did they only appear here, or around the whole school? Todoroki mused, his expression icy. If the sensors aren't reacting, it means they have someone with a quirk that can jam them. An isolated area separated from the main campus. A class scheduled to be here. They aren't fools. This is a coordinated surprise attack with a specific goal. Aizawa stepped forward, his goggles sliding over his eyes. His scarf began to float, defying gravity. 13. Evacuate the students and try to contact the school, Aizawa commanded. Kaminari, try to use your quirk to signal for help. What about you, sensei? I yelled, stepping forward. You can't fight them all alone. Even if you can erase their quirks, there's too many of them. Eraserhead style is capturing after erasing. A head-on battle against a group is. You can't be a hero with only one trick, Aizawa said. He looked back at us. For a brief second, his eyes met mine. He didn't see the demon this time. He just saw a student. I'm leaving them to you, 13. Aizawa leaped. He didn't fall, he dove. He was a blur of black cloth and motion. He landed in the plaza amidst the villains. Shooting squad, go, one of the villains yelled, raising a gun. Aizawa looked at him. The gun drooped as the villain faltered. Aizawa's capture weapon lashed out, wrapping around two villains. He slammed them together, the crack of skulls echoing through the silent dome. He was dancing through them. Punching, kicking, erasing. It was a masterclass in crowd control. But my eyes were drawn to the back of the villain group. Standing next to the portal man and the handman was a monster. It was huge, easily as tall as All Might. Its skin was a deep, bruised purple. It had a beak like a bird, massive muscular arms, and its brain was exposed, sitting atop its head like a grotesque trophy. It didn't move. It just stood there, breathing. A doll, Sukuna's voice echoed in my mind. It was bored. A corpse puppet without a soul. How tasteful. Come on, Midoriya. Ida grabbed my shoulder. We have to evacuate. All right. I turned. We ran toward the exit. But just as we reached the massive doors, the purple mist swirled into existence in front of us, blocking the path. I cannot allow that, the mist spoke. Two glowing yellow eyes narrowed in the smoke. We are the League of Villains. It may be presumptuous of us, but we have invited ourselves into the home of heroes, UA High School, in order to have All Might, the symbol of peace, take his last breath. 13 raised their finger, the cap of their glove flipping open. I believe All Might should have been here, the mist Kurogiri continued. Has there been some change? Well, that is neither here nor there. This is the Part 1 play. Get out of the way. Bakugo and Kirishima didn't wait. They lunged. Bet you didn't see this coming. Bakugo screamed, setting off a massive explosion directly against the mist's body. Did we get him? Kirishima asked as the smoke cleared. No, I whispered. My vessel sense was tingling. The mist hadn't dispersed, it had just reformatted. That was close, Kurogiri said calmly. Yes. Students you may be, but you are the golden eggs of the hero world. The mist expanded. It rushed toward us like a tidal wave of darkness. No. Move back. 13 yelled, unleashing their black hole. But it was too late. The mist engulfed us. The floor disappeared. Voila! I felt the sensation of falling. Space warped around me. Gravity is shifting, I thought, panic rising. Where is he sending us? I slammed into water. Cold. The shock of the temperature hit me instantly. I was submerged. Salt water filled my nose. I kicked upward, breaking the surface, gasping for air. Pooh! I looked around. I was in the shipwreck zone. An artificial lake with a massive, sinking ship in the center. Midoriya. Deku-kun. I turned to see Mineta flailing in the water, looking like a panicked grape, and Tsuyu swimming calmly next to him. Addison, Mineta. I called out. Call me to you, she said, grabbing Mineta by his costume and tossing him onto the boat. She extended her long tongue, wrapped it around my waist, and hauled me up onto the deck. We collapsed on the rusted metal of the ship's deck. This is bad, this is bad, this is bad. Mineta was hyperventilating, pacing back and forth. Villains. Real villains. We're gonna be tortured. We're gonna die. Calm down, Mineta, I said, wringing out my costume. Panicking won't help. I looked over the railing. Below us, in the water, shadows were circling. Dozens of them. Villains. Some with shark quirks, some with squid quirks, others just treading water with weapons. They've surrounded the boat, Tsu noted. They aren't attacking yet. Maybe they're waiting. They're waiting for us to panic and jump in, I muttered. Or for the boat to sink. We're trapped. Mineta cried. I haven't even touched a melons yet. I can't die. I ignored him. I needed to think. Why are they here? To kill All Might. But All Might isn't here. So they'll kill us to lure him out? Or maybe just to send a message. Midoriya-chan, Tsu said. You're doing it again. The muttering. Sorry, I said. I'm thinking about their plan. If they have a warp user, why didn't they warp us into fire or magma? Why water? And why separate us? Maybe they don't know our quirks? Tsuyu suggested. Exactly. I snapped my fingers. They separated us to break our coordination, but they didn't know who would land where. That means they don't know our abilities. We have the element of surprise. Surprise? Mineta shrieked. Look at them. There's like 50 of them. And I just have these sticky ball. They're useless for combat. He pulled a purple ball from his head and threw it into the water in frustration. It bobbed there. Mineta, I said, watching the ball. Depending on how you use them. Those could be our way out. I looked at the villains. They were getting impatient. One of them, a man with a shark fin, started climbing the hull. Getting tired of waiting, the villain jeered. Trash, the demon whispered. Look at them. Weaklings huddled together like sardines. You could slaughter them all in a heartbeat if you let me take the wheel. Shut up, I thought fiercely. I'm doing this my way. I have a plan, I said, turning to Tsuyu and Mineta. But it's risky. Mineta, can your balls stick together? Yeah, they stick to anything but me. Tsuyu, how strong are your legs? I can jump pretty far, she said. Okay, I took a deep breath. I walked to the edge of the deck. I looked at my right hand. The memory of Aizawa scolding me flashed in my mind. Don't break your body. But I needed power. I needed to displace the water. I don't need to break my finger, I realized. I have the reinforcement. If I channel one for all, and coat it with cursed energy, I can withstand the recoil just enough. Mineta, throw everything you've got into the water. Now. Mineta screamed a battle cry that sounded more like a whine and started pelting the water with purple spheres. Tsuyu, grab us and get ready to jump. Tsuyu wrapped her tongue around Mineta and me. I leaned over the railing. Hey, what's the kid doing? A villain shouted. He's gonna flick us? Another laughed. I placed my thumb against my middle finger. I pulled one for all. The golden light flooded my veins. But then, the oil-slick darkness of Sukuna's energy seeped in. It wrapped around the bones of my finger, hardening them, turning them into a black steel rod. Don't break. Delaware. Smash. I snapped my finger. It wasn't just wind pressure. The air crackled with black lightning. Boom. The force hit the center of the lake. The water didn't just splash, it parted. A massive shockwave tore through the liquid, creating a violent whirlpool. The villains were Esigen, screaming. Now, Mineta. The whirlpool dragged the villains together. And as they collided, Mineta's ball acted as the glue. They stuck to each other arm to leg, face to chest, weapon to fin. In seconds, the terrifying horde was reduced to a giant, struggling ball of villains bobbing in the center of the vortex. Whoa! Mineta cheered. Look at my ball go. Jump! I yelled. Tsuyu launched us. We soared through the air, high above the chaos. I clutched my hand. My finger was purple, swollen, and throbbing with agony. It was fractured, definitely, but not pulverized like in the entrance exam. The reinforcement had saved the bone from turning to dust. We landed in the shallow water near the shore of the flood zone. We did it. Mineta cried, hugging Tsuyu's leg. We're alive. Let go or I'll drown you, Tsuyu said calmly. We need to help the others, I said, standing up. And Sensei. We crept toward the plaza, hiding behind the ornamental rocks. What I saw made my blood run cold. Aizawa was fighting. But he wasn't dancing anymore. He was tired. His hair was falling flat more often. The villains were overwhelming him with sheer numbers. But the real horror was the man with the hands, Shigaraki. He was rushing Aizawa. Aizawa elbowed him in the gut, but Shigaraki grabbed Aizawa's elbow. "You're cool, Eraserhead," Shigaraki whispered. The flesh on Aizawa's elbow turned gray. It crumbled. Disintegrated. But Shigaraki pointed to the side. "I'm not the final boss." Behind Aizawa, the purple monster the Nomu moved. It was fast. Impossible fast. It grabbed Aizawa's head and slammed him into the concrete. "Sensei!" I gasped, almost running out. "So you held me back?" "No, Midoriya-chan. Look." The Noma held Aizawa down. One massive hand gripped his arm. Snap. It broke Aizawa's arm like a twig. Aizawa screamed a raw, gut-wrenching sound. "You can erase quirks," Shigaraki said, scratching his neck violently. "But you can't erase pure power. This is the Nomu, engineered to kill the symbol of peace. Compared to him, you're just a man." Meanwhile, at the entrance, "Ida, go!" Sato and Siro grabbed onto the attacking villains, using their bodies as shields. "But I can't leave you," Ida yelled. "Go!" 13 wheezed. They were on the ground, their costume torn open. Kurogyri had used a warp gate to redirect 13's black hole back at them. The space hero was half destroyed. "Class rep," Achiko shouted. She touched herself, making herself weightless, and grabbed Kurogyri's metal neck brace, his only solid part. "I'll make him float." "Run." Ida gritted his teeth. Tears streamed down his face under his helmet. "Demenit." He revved his engines. Recipro burst. He became a blur. He shot past Kurogyri, the sonic boom blowing the mist away for a second. "No, you don't." Kurogyri expanded, trying to close the exit. "Engine boost." Ida crashed through the massive steel doors. The locks shattered. He tumbled out into the sunlight. "He escaped," Kurogyri said, his voice void of emotion. "Shigaraki, one of the children, has escaped. He will bring reinforcements." Back at the plaza, Shigaraki stopped scratching his neck. He sighed. "Game over," he said, sounding like a disappointed child. "The pros will be here in minutes. We can't win against the whole school." He looked down at Aizawa, whose face was smashed into the pavement, blood pooling around his head. "Let's go home, Kurogyri." "Leaving?" Mineta whispered, tears of joy streaming down his face. "They're leaving? We're saved." I watched them. Shigaraki turned to the portal. "But..." Shigaraki stopped. He turned his head slowly. His eye, visible through the fingers on his face, locked onto us. "Before we leave, let's smash some of his pride." He looked at the water where we were hiding. "Let's kill a few students." Shigaraki lunged. He was in front of us instantly. His hand reached out for Tsuyu's face. Time slowed. I saw Tsuyu's eyes widen. I saw Shigaraki's hand, all 5 fingers extended. I knew what would happen. Decay. She would turn to dust. My body moved. I didn't think about One for All. I didn't think about Aizawa. I lunged forward, my arm extended to punch Shigaraki. Smash! But Shigaraki didn't dodge. The Noma did. The monster appeared between us. It took my punch. Pow! There was no shockwave. No explosion. The Noma stood there. My fist was buried in its gut, but it felt like hitting a wall of rubber. The shock absorption nullified everything. "Nice punch," Shigaraki said. "But useless." The Nomu grabbed my arm. It squeezed. I felt my radius and ulna grinding together. But then, Shigaraki reached past the Nomu. He reached for Tsuyu again. "No!" I screamed. I couldn't pull my arm free. I was trapped. Tsuyu was going to die. "Are you going to let him touch what is yours?" The voice wasn't a whisper. It was a roar. My vision flashed red. The fear vanished. The panic vanished. Replaced by a cold, arrogant fury. My vessel sense spiked. Shigaraki's hand was inches from Tsuyu's face. But suddenly Shigaraki stopped. He flinched, pulling his hand back as if he had touched a hot stove. What? Shigaraki muttered, looking around. He looked at me. For a second, the boy gripping the Nomu's arm wasn't there. Behind me, looming like a phantom, was a four-armed demon sitting on a throne of skulls. The shrine. The killing intent wasn't coming from Shigaraki anymore. It was coming from me. Shigaraki stepped back, a genuine shiver running down his spine. Nomu, Shigaraki ordered, his voice shaky. Kill the brat. The Nomu raised its other fist to crush my skull. I looked at the fist. You dare. I channeled cursed energy. Not into a smash. Into a shield. The fist came down. Boom. Dust clouds rose. Midoriya. Tsuyu screamed. The dust cleared. I was still standing. My arm was still in the Nomu's grip. But I had caught the Nomu's other fist with my free hand. My fingers were digging into the Nomu's purple skin. I looked up. My eyes were red, my pupils were vertical slits. Black markings were faintly etching themselves across my face. Get your hands off me, you curse reject, I growled. It wasn't my voice. It was deeper. Distorted. I squeezed. The Nomu, the bioengineered monster designed to fight All Might, screeched. My grip strength, amplified by the King of Curses, crushed the bones in the Nomu's hand. Shigaraki's eyes widened. What is that? The heavy doors of the USJ burst open. I am here. All Might stood in the doorway. He wasn't smiling. He ripped his tie off. Anger was palpable. I blinked. The markings faded. The demon retreated, bored by the arrival of the hero. I slumped, the pain in my arm returning tenfold. Might. I whispered. The symbol of peace had arrived. But the monster inside me had already staked its claim. The arrival of All Might was usually accompanied by hope. It was a bright, overwhelming radiance that promised safety. But this time, there was no smile. There was no theatrical laughter. There was only a cold, compressed fury that saturated the air, heavier than any villain's bloodlust. I slumped back, my legs finally giving out. The adrenaline that had allowed me to channel the King of Curses evaporated, leaving behind the jagged reality of my injuries. My right arm, where the Nomu had gripped me, throbbed with a dull, grinding agony. My radius wasn't broken, thanks to the cursed reinforcement, but the muscle was crushed, the nerves screaming in protest. I am here, All Might said, ripping his tie off as he walked down the stairs. I am sorry, Aizawa. I should have been here sooner. It was a blur. In the blink of an eye, All Might was gone from the entrance. Whoosh! A shockwave blasted through the central plaza. The villains surrounding us were blown away like dry leaves in a hurricane. Midoriya. Azui. Mineta. I blinked. All Might was suddenly standing in front of us, his back turned to the villains. In his arms, he held the unconscious, bloodied form of Aizawa-sensei. Get Aizawa to the entrance, All Might commanded, his voice low and vibrating with suppressed rage. Quickly. All Might. Mineta wept, clinging to Tsuyu. You're here. Karo. Tsuyu looked stunned. He's so fast. I looked down. In my peripheral vision, I saw something that made my stomach churn. The Nomu, the monster I had just momentarily held back, was regenerating. The hand I had crushed, the bones I had pulverized with Sukuna's strength, were snapping back into place with wet, sickening pops. Regeneration, I realized. Just like the stories of high-level curses. Everyone, back to the entrance. All Might yelled, launching himself at Shigaraki. Carolina. Smash. He crossed his arms and chopped downward. The air pressure was immense. But the Nomu moved. It stepped in front of Shigaraki, taking the blow. It didn't budge. It's no use, All Might, Shigaraki laughed, his voice raspy and manic. His quirk is shock absorption. To hurt him, you'd have to slowly gouge out his flesh. But he won't let you do that. The Nomu punched. All Might blocked. The shockwave shattered the concrete beneath them. The water in the lake zone rippled violently. Mineta, take sensei. I gritted my teeth, standing up. I have to watch. Deku-chan, you're hurt. Tsuyu said, hoisting Aizawa onto her back with surprising strength. I have to analyze it, I lied. Go! They ran. I stayed behind a rock, clutching my bruised arm. Analyze it? I closed my eyes for a second. Are you watching? Deep in the void, the presence shifted on his throne. I am, the voice replied, sounding bored yet critical. So this is your idol? The symbol of peace? All Might and the Nomu were trading blows. It was a slugfest of titans. Each punch created a vacuum in the air. He is strong, Sukuna mused. For a human, his physical vessel is deteriorating, rotting from the inside out, yet he exerts force that rivals a heavenly restriction. But, Sukuna chuckled darkly. He is fighting a doll. That creature has no soul. It is just meat and commands. A boring opponent for a dying star. Dying star. I whispered. Sukuna was right. I could see it. Smoke was already starting to rise from All Might's body. He was pushing past his limit. Shock absorption, huh? All Might roared, ducking a massive haymaker from the Nomu. If you can absorb 100%, then I'll just have to force you to surrender from over 100%. He began to pummel the creature. It was a blur of fists. Or. The Nomu was being pushed back. The shock absorption was failing to keep up with the sheer frequency of the attacks. A head-on slugfest? Shigaraki scratched his neck furiously. He's crazy. He's brute-forcing it. Suddenly, the mist villain, Kurogyri, saw an opening. He warped behind All Might. All Might! I screamed. Kurogyri opened a gate. The Nomu's lower half disappeared into the portal, and its claws re-emerged from a portal directly under All Might's waist. The claws dug into All Might's side right into his old wound. Gah! All Might coughed blood. No! I moved. My legs fired. I didn't think. I just ran. Fool, Sukuna whispered. You intervene in a battle of gods with the body of a mortal. I jumped. Get away from him. I pulled back my fist. One for all. 100%. But before I could fire, ice surged past me. A massive glacier erupted from the ground, encasing the Nomu's right side and arm, freezing it solid. The creature halted, unable to squeeze All Might. I landed, skidding to a halt. One of your students mentioned. You were trying to kill All Might, a cold voice said. Shoto Todoroki stood there, his right side covered in frost. Todoroki! I gasped. Get out of the way, Deku. Katsuki Bakugo flew in like a missile. He didn't aim for the Nomu, he aimed for the mist. He slammed Kurogyri's metal neck brace into the ground, pinning the elusive warper. Caught you, you slippery bee. Bakugo grinned savagely. If you move, I'll blow you to bits. And don't forget me. Kirishima jumped in, hardening his arm to chop at Shigaraki, forcing the villain to retreat. We're here to back you up. Kirishima yelled. The tides had turned. The students, the golden eggs, had arrived. You kids. All Might wheezed, breaking free from the frozen Nomu. He clutched his side, steam rolling off him. Kaken. Todoroki. I breathed a sigh of relief. Shigaraki stood 10 meters away, scratching his neck so hard his skin was peeling. Kurogyri. Our exit is pinned. The Nomu is frozen. The game is bugged. He looked at me. His eye, bloodshot and manic, locked onto mine. And that kid. Shigaraki pointed a trembling finger at me. He's a cheat code. He touched the Nomu earlier and something happened. He turned to the Nomu. The creature was half frozen, its arms stuck. Nomu. Break out. The Nomu didn't hesitate. It pulled. Rear-up. The sound was nauseating. The Nomu ripped its own arm and leg off, shattering the frozen limbs. It stood on one leg, balancing effortlessly, as the flesh began to bubble and regenerate instantly. Regeneration? Todoroki's eyes widened. I thought it was just shock absorption. It has super regeneration too, Shigaraki said. Nomu, kill the explosive brat and free Kurogyri. The Nomu vanished. It was too fast. No one saw it move. It appeared in front of Bakugo. The fist was raised. Bakugo looked up, his eyes wide, realizing he couldn't dodge. He was going to die. My body reacted before my mind did. But I wasn't fast enough. Not without 100%. A shockwave leveled the area. When the dust cleared, Bakugo was sitting on the ground, stunned. But he hadn't been hit. All Might had taken the blow. He stood between Bakugo and the Nomu, his arms crossed in an X block. The concrete behind him had been gouged out by the force of his skid. All Might. Bakugo whispered. Do not fear. All Might shouted, though blood trickled from his mouth. For I am angry. All Might grabbed the Nomu's arm. Midoriya. Bakugo. Todoroki. Get back. All Might didn't wait. He unleashed Hell. Plus. Ultra. It wasn't a fight anymore. It was a demolition. All Might punched the Nomu so fast that he created afterimages. Every hit sent a shockwave that threatened to blow us off our feet. Sukuna, I thought, shielding my eyes from the gale force winds. Do you see this? I see it, the demon replied. And for the first time, there was a hint of, not respect, but acknowledgement. He is burning his life force as fuel. He is sacrificing his future for this moment. It is distinctly human and utterly foolish. Go beyond. All Might screamed. He delivered a final, earth-shattering uppercut. Washington, D.C. smash. The Nomu was launched. It broke the sound barrier. It broke the ceiling of the dome. It broke the clouds above. It was gone, punched into the stratosphere. Silence fell over the USJ. All Might stood amidst the rubble. He was trembling. Steam poured off him in thick waves. He raised a fist. Finished the job. The students cheered. He did it. He's amazing. But I saw it. I saw his legs shaking. I saw the way his arm hung limp. He was at his limit. No, he was past it. The flame of One for All was flickering, a candle in a hurricane. He's helpless, I whispered. Shigaraki saw it too. He's not moving, Shigaraki whispered. The fear in his eyes was replaced by a gleam of opportunity. He's weaker. We can still win. Shigaraki ran. He ran toward All Might, hand outstretched. All Might. All Might didn't move. He couldn't. No. I scrambled to my feet. My arm was useless. My legs were jelly. But I had to move. I ran. But I was too slow. Die. Shigaraki reached for All Might's chest. Bang. 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 Shots rang out. Shigaraki jerked violently. Blood sprayed from his hand, his leg, his shoulder. He collapsed, tumbling across the concrete. Sorry we're late. A voice boomed from the entrance. I looked up. Mizu. Snipe. Ectoplasm. The teachers. The pros are here. Kirishima cheered. Shigaraki clutched his bleeding hand, looking at the teachers with pure hatred. Kurogyri. Wrap it up. The mist engulfed Shigaraki. But before he vanished, Shigaraki looked at me one last time. His gaze wasn't on All Might. It was on me. That kid, he rasped. Midoriya. The one with the shadow. He disappeared. The aftermath was a blur of blue lights and sirens. The police arrived in droves, securing the USJ, taking statements, and counting heads. I sat on the step of an ambulance, a blanket draped over my shoulders. A paramedic was tending to my arm. It's just deep bruising, the medic said. You're lucky nothing is broken. But Deku-kun. I looked up. Uraraka was running toward me. Her face was streaked with dirt and tears. She didn't stop. She threw her arms around me, hugging me tight. Ouch, ouch. I winced. Sorry. She pulled back, gripping my good hand with both of hers. Her hands were trembling. I was so worried. Tsuchan told me you stayed behind. And then the explosions. And the monster. I'm okay, Uraraka-san, I said softly, squeezing her hand back. We're all okay. She sniffled, wiping her eyes. I felt so useless. I just ran away with the class. But you fought. I just did what I had to. Midoriya-chan. Tsuyu hopped over, a thoughtful finger on her chin. She looked at me, her large eyes unblinking. In the plaza, she said quietly, so only Uraraka and I could hear. Before All Might came. When you grabbed the Nomu. I froze. Your face changed, she said. And your voice. It sounded scary. Like a different person. My heart hammered against my ribs. She saw. I was just really angry, I stammered, looking away. Adrenaline makes you do crazy things, right? I don't even remember it clearly. Tsuyu stared at me for a long moment. Then she shrugged. Maybe. As long as you're okay. You saved me, Midoriya-chan. Thank you. She walked away to join the others. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Are you hiding something, Deku-kun? Uraraka asked softly. I looked at her. Her brown eyes were full of concern, not suspicion. I hesitated. I wanted to tell her. I wanted to tell someone. There's a monster inside me. I'm dangerous. But I couldn't. It would put her in danger. I'm just tired, I said, forcing a smile. Really tired. She squeezed my hand tighter. Then rest. I'll stay right here. We sat there in silence, holding hands amidst the chaos of the flashing lights. It was a moment of peace, a small island in the storm. But inside, the storm was raging. You enjoyed it, the voice whispered. I closed my eyes. You did, Sukuna taunted. When you crushed that doll's hand. When you felt your power tower over that man-child Shigaraki. You felt it. The thrill of dominance. The taste of being a predator. I did it to save Tsuyu, I argued mentally. Motivation is irrelevant. The feeling is absolute. I looked down at my hand, the hand Achiko wasn't holding. The hand that had crushed bone. Sukuna was right. For a split second. It had felt good. It had felt powerful. Midoriya. Uraraka. Ida marched over, his arm in a sling, tears flowing freely. I am glad you are safe. The class is being loaded onto the bus to return to school. Coming, class rep, I said, standing up. I walked toward the bus, casting one last look at the USJ dome. The villains had failed. All Might had won. But something had shifted. Shigaraki knew. Aizawa suspected. And I had opened the door a little wider. The name echoed in my mind again. Ryaman Sukuna. I had remembered the name. And by remembering it, I had acknowledged him. Don't think I'll be quiet now, brat, the King of Curses murmured as I stepped onto the bus. Have much to discuss.